All right, welcome to the December 6th, 2023 Select Board meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just before we get going, the town issued a press release condemning the hate that happened, an event that happened in the front yard of a Swampscott resident's home. I'm going to read the press release for the official record. December 5th, 2023. This morning, Swampscott police received a call from a Swampscott resident about a "We Stand with Israel" sign placed in the front yard, which was defaced with anti-Semitic rhetoric and a swastika used by the Nazi Party in Germany that murdered 6 million Jewish men, women, and children. According to a recent report by CNN, there has been a dramatic spike in hate incidents against Jewish and Muslim individuals across the country amid the outbreak of war between Israel and Hamas. The Anti-Defamation League said that since the Hamas attack on October 7th, anti-Semitic incidents in the United States increased by 388%. The ADL cited some 312 anti-Semitic incidents between October 7th and 23rd. By comparison, there were 64 incidents over the same time frame in 2022. The Swampscott Select Board and Town Administrator issued the following statements unanimously condemning hate and this recent anti-Semitic incident in Swampscott and expressing solidarity with Jewish families in Swampscott and around the world. It is intolerable to see these types of hate crimes in Swampscott, said Swampscott Select Board Chair David Grishman. The town of Swampscott is shocked by this incident and stands with all those who fight against hate in our community. Swampscott stands against all those who espouse hate in the strongest possible terms, said Katie Phelan, Vice Chair of the Swampscott Select Board. We all have an obligation to speak out against this ugly sign of hate and share our love for all. I have said this before, as citizens of Swampscott, we all share a responsibility to confront hate, and this starts right here at home in Swampscott, said Swampscott Select Board member Peter Spelios. Unfortunately, these are dark days, and there's too much hate in our community and throughout the world. We must call out this hate and what this Nazi symbol represents. It is heartbreaking to see so much hate. Both innocent Israeli and Palestinian families have been targets of violence and hate and have been victimized. We need more care, we need more love, we need more understanding, and we need peace between Israel and Palestine, said Swampscott Select Board member Doug Thompson. The actions of this coward do not speak for the good people of Swampscott. With anti-Semitism on the rise, we all need to lead with our actions and do everything possible to recognize this hate and push against it. It's fine to talk about loving our neighbors, but only our actions can make a difference. It starts with each one of us, said Swampscott Select Board member Mary Ellen Fletcher. Swampscott's Town Administrator Sean Fitzgerald shared that Swampscott needs to stand together during a rapid rise of anti-Semitic rhetoric and hate symbolism. We must not ignore this incident and the hate that has been scrawled on this sign as is pure evil. We all must discuss this incident at home with our families and our children. Now is the time to stand up and support our Jewish neighbors and families. They need our help, he said. Swampscott Police Criminal Investigations Division is currently investigating this as a hate incident with bias. The town is currently in contact with the ADL and other Jewish partners, along with the Essex County's DA's office. Anyone with information about this incident should call the Swampscott Police Department at 781-595-1111.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, I appreciate the press release included a graphic of the sign. Can I ask, I believe the town administrator has that tonight, and I think, frankly, we should be talking about it while looking at it. Sure. Because I think people need to see the pure evil, the pure hate. That,
Scroll down, Diane, please. There's also a reverse image, too.
This is a Swampscott family. This is, doesn't matter, it's Swampscott, anyone's family. An 18-year-old who volunteers tremendously for this town, that goes to Swampscott Public Schools, walks out to see the sign. That advocates eliminating his family, and millions of people from the face of the earth. We should just sit with that and just be horrified and not be afraid to sit and be horrified. And I hope that we all find our words to express that and to speak to the person next to you and behind you about this pure evil.
I think the most difficult part of this is that we know this exists. We know that it's here. We know that our children are facing more and more of this rhetoric. It's happening online, it's happening in video game forums, and it's on a rise both nationally and here in Swampscott. And so what are we gonna do? Like, what are we going to do? We can't just sit here and say, this is wrong. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it with our families. We have to talk about it with our friends. We have to talk about it when we have breakfast and when we have dinner, we have lunch. There's too much hate in this country. There's too much hate in this town. And we've got to figure out how to bring a different narrative. We need more programs with our sports programs. We need more programs with our arts programs. We need more. And we've got to figure out how to change this narrative. We've got a community full of people that love each other. We have wonderful neighbors. We have a wonderful town. We've got to figure out how to get more of that into the narrative.
Thanks, Sean.
I assume there's still an investigation going on, and there's a lot we don't know about exactly the genesis of this, whether or not this is, a young citizen here in Swampscott or not, or someone from Swampscott or not that did this. I don't know the facts, but I would be curious. I don't think this is the forum necessarily that we're gonna brainstorm solutions, but I'm curious about what the one thing we do have control over is what education happens here in schools, and whether or not there's any part of the curriculum that actually addresses this. There are other programs certainly that exist in other communities. I was reading about one in the paper this weekend because obviously this topic is very germane everywhere right now, and there are ways in which communities are brought together to talk about this in a constructive and structured way, so that it's not just this is important, but to your point, what are we going to do? Just every time this happens, getting outraged is a good first step, but what is our next step?
Additional comments, questions?
I just think it's just reflecting on something Doug just said, which is every time this happens, which since I've sat on the board, every defamatory incident that has happened in this town has been anti-Semitic. And just sitting in that uncomfortableness, right? Like Peter was saying, as we talk about DE&I consultants and folks who are meant to be brought into this community to educate us, inform us, help us navigate these disgusting and graphic and uncomfortable waters, I think we need a renewed mission to understand how they affect our community and just how this consultant can help us move forward in a way that is thoughtful, actionable, tangible, so that if we cannot stop these things from occurring, we could help folks feel the embrace of the community when they do occur.
Thanks, Katie. All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna talk about the town administrator's report. Sean?
Thank you, David. Tonight we'll go over a review of our classification with our assessor's agent and town staff. There's been a significant drop-off of new growth. Certainly, this will present a financial challenge to the town. We've identified that both Salem and surrounding communities are also struggling with new growth. This is a sign of the economic impact of both COVID, but also higher interest rates. We do have a special town meeting this Monday. Certainly, we'll be going over a number of warrants. One of those warrants will be to look at reductions in the town levy. This past week, I met with the Historic Commission Chair and Select Board Member Doug Thompson to go over elements of how we can look to preserve and salvage pieces of the historic Lever farm. Our new school continues to move forward on time and on budget. It's hard to believe that just a year ago we signed a contract for the school, and we are moving forward, with a brisk clip to see that project completed this summer on time and on budget. Over the last 2 weeks, I've met with Mayor Nicholson and regional officials to go over the work on Kings Beach. We have a meeting tomorrow at Town Hall with the Secretary of the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs to go over some of the work that we've done to explore additional strategies to help support the remediation of impairments to Kings Beach. Mayor Nicholson is eager to move forward with a number of studies and alternatives, as I am. We agreed that we are going to be sharing the costs for some of this additional work. We are going to be meeting over the next few weeks and really looking at getting much more information out on a town landing page, and including updated flyers and project emails, and really looking to help people understand the environmental impact of our stormwater runoff in our resource areas. This is an important public health and public safety responsibility. Continue to meet with our tri-chair. We have had a number of meetings over the last month to work through town and school finances. These are complicated responsibilities. Certainly appreciate the work of the town finance teams. We certainly have a few responsibilities to support some ministerial transfers to the school department that include Chapter 70 monies for our next special town meeting, along with some reimbursements for McKinney-Vento transportation. 2 weeks ago, I attended a meeting of the Mass Municipal Managers Association. First time I've been there in a couple of years, but certainly a lot of conversations around civil service as well as town finances. Town continues to work with interested parties that are seeking to take tours of the Hadley School. We've had over 15 boutique hotel companies visit Swampscott to see if the Hadley School will be a suitable project for them. It's exciting to see these individuals come to town and really think about the possibility of seeing that building brought back to some historic use as a hotel. Our senior center continues to be busy. We've made a few changes with staffing, but really great program on opening minds through art and collaborating with individuals at the high school. There's an art show that will be starting on December 15th, and there'll be a TV, radio, or a Channel 2 radio program on the collaboration between the high school and the senior center. We're applying for a grant regionally for a new van, all electric, and we're collaborating with the town of Nahant to focus on some regional transportation initiatives. Last week, I had 8 interviews for candidates for the police department. I've issued 4 conditional offers for some of the vacancies. We had a great, opportunity to work with the police union and support some of the hate crime awareness and response programs. Lieutenant Waters has been working with the state police. We have our police patrol stopping by the temples 3 or 4 times a day to ensure safety. Certainly working with Marblehead and Hunt to combat hate, and we're looking at a number of other grant programs that will help focus on our youth and some of the best practices around ensuring our youth are protected from some of the hate. We did secure a $28,000 traffic enforcement grant. These are for pedestrian and bike safety, and we got some great information that our new software system, DUFFY, took in $6,000 in transient moorings over the summer, and this has been a real enhancement for our harbor master function. Also conducted an interview last week for a vacancy in the fire department. We've made a conditional offer. The department has been working on a archive for building files, and we're moving all of our building files online. DPW has been busy. This past year we paved 29 roadways and spent over $1 million. Also planted 60 trees. Library is busy as well. They have a number of offerings in the Library of Things. If you haven't been by to see what you can get with the Library of Things, everything from tools to technology. They also were awarded a technical assistance grant for $30,000, and they'll be offering gingerbread housing building kits. Human Resources has been busy filling a number of administrative positions, and as a reminder, we're changing our notification systems from Blackboard to OneSolve. You have to sign up for this new system. We're launching this on December 1st, so if you haven't signed up, I encourage you to just go to swampscott.ma.gov, subscribe, and there's also a link on our Facebook page. That is my report.
Thanks, Sean. Questions from the board?
I have a question on Kings Beach. What's the process going to be for the peer review?
So I've reached out to Kleinfelder. They're putting together a scope of work. The thought was we'd look at everything that we've done to date over the last 10 years, look at the consent order and kind of get a sense of whether or not our strategy for where we've worked and how we've worked, and the priorities we've established, are consistent with the maximum, remediation, and then we'll take a look at the entire alternative analysis and get a sense of whether or not there's anything else there that we could have evaluated or done better. That's the entire scope of our level of effort.
Is Kleinfelder doing the peer review?
No, that would not be a peer review.
That's what it sounds
That would not
like.
be a peer review.
No, we gotta
No,
get
it didn't sound like it. It sounded like they were helping put together
A scope.
a scope for a peer review.
and we'll get it out. We'll have to go to
Right.
RFP and we'll get responses in, and they'll do that independently. So we'll get a new independent report that will help us understand, could we have evaluated something in a different area or done a different level of effort in some way that would help us better define the efficacy with all of our, IDDE or illicit discharge and detection. I think that's been really a big conversation. I did have a meeting with the EPA today, and we did talk about the peer review. I want to make sure that state agencies also add input into this, because I think they could help us really ensure that, we can answer some of their questions as well. I don't think any of us are happy with the level of efficacy in terms of how much time we've spent and how little progress we've made with addressing the remediation on Kings Beach. It's taking too long, and if this peer review can help us get faster, that would be helpful.
I appreciate you getting right on that.
Me too.
Sean, quick question about the conditional offers that were made to the from the 8 interviews. for the police officers. How quickly could these individuals be wearing SPD uniforms?
So 2 of the conditional offers were issued to 2 individuals that are currently certified as Massachusetts police officers. They could start in literally weeks. 2 were issued to individuals that would have to go to an academy, and that would take many months. Could be as many as 6 to 9 months.
So when is the next academy, and how would that
They're
process play
rolling.
out?
They, academies have rolling dates. We have a student officer in the Northern Essex Academy up in Haverhill. Certainly, you know, there's academies down on the South Shore and in Boston. So, you know, as soon as we can get them in, we'll get them in.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more question on DPW. We did 1 million on the paving. Have we used all the money in the capital for paving this year, Patrick?
Has it all been expended?
Yeah,
I don't believe so. I can tell you.
because I thought we had, did we double that last year?
Yes, yeah, there was a year where we doubled that. I'll get you there.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
And then, I mean, there was a major accident at the, you know, at Walker and Paradise Road. I know we just received a grant for pedestrian and bike safety. I mean, is there also gonna be additional measures put into place to keep the speed down?
We are,
there and
yep.
visibility high, and is the police department in conjunction with public safety officials gonna come back to the select board with additional recommendations and suggestions?
Yes, you know, I've charged both the police department, fire department to really look at ways to use the capital plan to help make recommendations for significant investments for pedestrian safety. So I expect that there will be some robust recommendations on how we, you know, continue to make those investments in pedestrian safety. This is a small grant. It's enforcement-based, it's not capital, but the capital plan is intended to, you know, really get the infrastructure programs that would help us, you know, address some of the complete street projects that we have that are defined as priorities and other pedestrian safety initiatives in the town.
But are there also additional capital grants, pedestrian and pedestrian safety?
The Complete Streets program is pretty much the main pedestrian safety program, but there are, you know, Safe Routes to School programs, there's other, you know, Mass DOT or, you know, state highway grants that, you know, may be niche, small little programs, but we are looking at some of those grants, and we've had a number of conversations about how to really bring teams around targeting some of those programs.
David, can I pick up on that just one quick?
Go ahead.
Because we did put $200,000, I think, in the capital for this year for this, right? And I think this does trigger, I think we said we were actually gonna have a plan. I know we've done some of that work, but maybe a couple months ago, I know we haven't really asked about it, so I don't know where that's at, but maybe next time, if you can come back with an update on
Sure.
how far we got, maybe other priorities came up, but we need to kind of, it's easy for it to fall off, but
I will
clearly we need to.
provide the board with an update at the next meeting on some of the pedestrian safety plans that we have in the works.
Because I enjoy some of the speed bumps that we have, but we could have more, so that would be great. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, anything else from the board? No? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Public comment is where members of the public can address the select board. I would ask that you stand in front of a microphone, tell us your name, address, and voting precinct if known, and you'll be limited to speak for 3 minutes. 1 second. All right. Hot mic. Go ahead.
Hi,
Hi.
Suzanne Wright, precinct 2. Nope, 3 now. school committee chair, and I'm speaking on school committee stuff right now. I originally thought I was going to speak to you tonight because I was discouraged on the last meeting, after last meeting, because I was just surprised at the reaction that that this board had with our school financial issues that we're facing this year and into next year. And I sort of like, when I heard it's coming out of the blue, I thought, wow, how is that possible? But then I realized that I should take a little bit more responsibility for my part in that, and I know my board has asked me to come here before too. So in addition to sharing information that we have with the tri-chair, with the select board and the finance committee, I think it probably would have been prudent for me to have come here to make you guys aware of our unexpected expenses that are hitting the FY24 budget, and if I had done this, the warrant articles that were suggested at your last board meeting probably would have made a lot more sense. So anyway, so now I'm here just to provide you a quick information update on the FY24 and 25 budgets. The articles that articles requested were to allocate the additional Chapter 70 funds and the homeless foster care transportation funds, which the town administrator just spoke to you about. So this past Monday, the town administrator confirmed that those two articles would be included in the draft warrant for the next town meeting. So I'm just really appreciative of the thoughtful and collaborative relationship that Dave and Eric and I have with the town administrator and the superintendent and the business team, the financial teams, because I think that you know, those meetings brought about this action, and we have a lot more work to do to relieve some of the financial pressures that the school's facing for sure, and I know the town is facing as well. So I look forward to attacking the 25 issues, which brings me to the 25 budget concerns. Through tri-chair discussions, we've come to an understanding that there are some costs that the school is facing that outpace the financial guidelines of 2% plus new growth. The most variable and unpredictable one that we have is the special ed costs. Currently, we have a handful of new out-of-district placements this year, and they're coupled with another jump in out-of-district tuitions on top of the 14% that we had last year. So we're well over budget per that guideline. The out-of-district tuitions that was expected in FY24, that was unexpected this year, that we need to cover that deficit with, is rolling into 25. This, coupled with drawing down our circuit breaker of $450,000 as asked of us last year, has really left us without a balance to rely on going into FY25. Are you going to let me keep talking? Thank you. So this cost, this balance going into 25 is going to be about $870,000. And then we also have some staffing increases in 24 due to student needs and mandated by IEPs that will roll over into 25 to the tune of approximately $200,000. And just recently, this past week, we've been become aware of a potential special assessment by the collaborative. That's the school where we send the majority of our students who receive out-of-district services. The assessments for major repairs that they need to make, and they're not exactly sure if it's going to impact this year or next year, but the original estimate for the assessment to Swampscott is $100,000. They are looking to go back out to bid and try some other strategies to lower the assessment, and so for now, since it's variable and we don't know the timing of it, it won't fall in the 25 budget, but it's just something in the back of our minds that we need to be concerned about. And then there's the new school. I mean, we're really excited. It looks like on time and on budget, right? But the operating costs are a concern. We are estimating, with the help of Mr. Casper, the expenses to be about the operating expenses to be about $190,000. That's 9% more than we currently pay for the elementary schools. You know, we have heating, cooling, elevators, ventilation systems, all sorts of things that we haven't had in our buildings previously. The building's all electric. We haven't dealt with that previously. And then we also are planning on solar panels, and once in place, we know that that's going to take time for it to function up to capacity. So we anticipate there will be a few years where this expense is really unpredictable. And secondly, the increased mandated transportation needs for the new school is going to mean funding 2 additional buses, and this is approximately $200,000. So. This is leaving our 25 budget, our proposed 25 budget really well over the 2% plus new growth. And I appreciate that that a lot of conversations are happening within the school district right now with leadership to look at every avenue and efficiencies. The budget that's being built by our finance director is truly a zero-based budget. She's looking everywhere with the leadership team to see if there's any ways we can be more efficient with our financial resources, but still adequately provide, adequately staff and provide our students with the education that makes this such a great school district. Last year, we reduced our staffing by 25 FTEs. Our class sizes for the vast majority are up significantly. There are fewer efficiencies to pursue, but we're committed to always looking at that stuff. But our deficit is well beyond what some reductions and reassignments and such can cover. But I have a lot of faith in the tri-chair meetings. I think we're having really productive meetings, and there's opportunities for there's opportunities for solutions to a lot of our problems, and I think we just need to work towards them. And having these warrant articles coming up and helping us out with 24 is really great, because then we get to sort of make that hole a little smaller to help us start working on 25. But anyway, most of the figures I'm giving to you, hopefully you have the 2 memos that our school finance director has sent out to the school committee at our last budget meeting. And just if you haven't looked at them yet, I mean, there is some good news. That in the November memo, there is some good news about money that the new school, some additional money the new school will be getting. And there's also the COPS grant that will fund the high school PA system instead of putting that on capital. So, it's not all doom and gloom, but we have a substantial problem to tackle, and I look forward to jointly working on school solutions and the school budget, but also balancing the town budgets with financial discipline. And I also would love to have, I know I've talked to the chairs of these 2 committees, but to have a joint meeting where we can share our projected budgets early enough that we can maybe help each other collaborate on solutions as a larger group. And to just end it, I'm in complete agreement with what the town administrator always says to me. We need to continue sharing critical conversations and keeping lines of communication open. So I'm open to any questions anytime. I mean, I want to strongly advocate for the school and our needs, and I know that you all care as much as I do about the students and the school system in this town too. But we really are at a juncture where we are really scared for what's coming down the pipe for next year's budget, and we just sort of need to get on the right track and do a little refresh here. So I'm open to questions anytime, and I appreciate the time and the extra time you allotted me.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy.
Thanks.
Ms. O'Connor.
Hi, I'm Amy O'Connor. I'm also a member of the school committee, and I just want to appreciate our chair for falling on her sword, for not educating you personally. However, I'd like to speak a little bit to some of the consternation and anger that's plaguing some of the members of the school committee and our district leadership. There should have been 2 school department articles on this upcoming special town meeting warrant. These 2 articles have been under discussion since late summer. On Monday, November 20th, our school chair assured us that we did not need to attend your meeting and our agreements would be honored. She had assurances from Mr. Grishman, and at least one of the articles would have been submitted on one of the articles that had been submitted to the town administrator well in advance. It wasn't. Because of these promises, no school committee members were there to advocate, and stupidly, we trusted. We feel like we're in the same position again after several years. For several years, despite discussions in tri-chair meetings and written agreements, the town has not followed through on its agreements with the schools. And consistently, at the 11th hour, the superintendent and school committee are left shocked by a warrant which intentionally omits financial agreements with the schools. The town administrator and his staff continue to obfuscate and craft their own narrative, painting the school department as one of dropping the ball. The superintendent, director of school finance, did not, in fact, say that they were okay with an agreement of holding off this until a potential future school special town meeting. As the superintendent's memo said to you last week, she can't base financial decisions on maybes and trust me's from the town administrator. We are exhausted fighting for funding, and this shouldn't even be a fight. Based on multiple rounds of similar games over several years, the school department tried to get smart and get things in writing. We decided publicly that there'd be no more conversations or agreements between the superintendent and town administrator that aren't both witnessed by others and memorialized on paper. So earlier this year, we got a signed agreement that any additional Chapter 70 money would first cover rising health costs, but the excess would come directly to the schools. And additionally, there are funds for transportation reimbursements that we paid, the state reimbursed us for, and the town administrator holds. Despite tri-chair agreements and discussions, November 20th, only Ms. Fletcher was interested in including and upholding written agreements. Mr. Spelios discussed that the importance of following process and then based his no vote on it being too last minute, and the rest of you followed along. You all voted no, while the town administrator and the chairman did nothing to set the facts straight that this was not a last-minute request. There should have been no debate had the town administrator or the chair spoken the truth. We waste time and energy fighting for what's already been agreed to. This is playing games with our operating budget. Ms. Phelan, you asked last week what's the harm in putting off the vote until a future meeting, and the answer is one of trust. The fact that the town administrator has yet again gone back on his word, both written and spoken, is damaging, time-consuming, and it has to stop. Suddenly, a few days before our next town meeting, we have a draft warrant for another special town meeting. Doesn't have any date on it, but it's uncanny timing. And with the message that Mr. Fitzgerald said that these are simply ministerial and will receive unanimous support, so I ask, why wasn't it done now? The dishonesty and outright lies of omission are doing actual damage to not only our working relationship, but to the Swampscott School District.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connor.
In this moment, I hope that we can appreciate that the select board allows public comment and allows anyone to get up and say anything they want, something the school committee actually doesn't allow. But I do appreciate the select board does allow that to hear it. It's a good reminder that we have public comment every meeting for this.
Yep. Mr. Pastor?
Good evening, Glenn Pastor, Precinct 2, also a school committee member. Thank you to Ms. Wright, fantastic job. Hello? Talking about what some of our angst is. Just to correct, we do have public comment. That was reinstated a couple months ago. The only thing I'm really going to say is, first, I also appreciate that at least the funds promised are now on the next warrant. I do want to reiterate what Suzanne had said is we do, from a school committee point of view, we do invite both boards, the select board and the finance committee, to have a joint meeting so we can give a presentation so you folks can actually see the numbers. It's great that we talk about it. I think it's much more impactful when we see those. So that would be fantastic. I also want to thank the select board for talking about the anti-Semitic words that were on the sign. Completely agree. It's, as someone who's Jewish, it's just abhorrent. The interesting part is, as Mr. Thompson said, well, is there any school curriculum about it? New school curriculum costs money, which at this juncture we don't have. We really don't have the money. So I do hope that all three boards will help us try to figure this out, because FY25, FY26, as more students come into the district, as more students go out of the district for special education, we do have a tangible problem. But again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your service as well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenn. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Neil Pearlstein, 20 Sutton Place in Swampscott, Precinct 5. I'm here, after all of that, about pickleball. And not in the way you might want to hear. I've been in town for 23 years. I live down next to the Phillips Park parking lot. So over the years, I've watched a movie get filmed there. I've spoken to Gino Cresta many times. And I was surprised to hear, reading in the Lynn item on the 27th of November, that there's a town warrant for a pickleball court to go in there. And when I decided to call the rec department to say, hey, we didn't know anything about this, I was told that there was another department doing it. Spoke to a woman there. I don't want to get her name wrong because it's, anyway, Marzi, but not sure how to pronounce the last name. But regardless of that, I was asking questions about it, and my first question was, did you talk to anybody who lives next door to it? That's a flood zone area. According to Gino, that area can't be paved because there's water buildup. And living there, we're in a flood zone. We all have flood insurance. It's a wetlands area. We live in a town called Swampscott. And I've got a neighbor who just spent tens of thousands of dollars to put in an 8-foot dry well because of water pooling. I have 2 dry wells that I put in my house 15 years ago. And I haven't heard anything about an environmental impact study of how that would affect it. That area is going to be close to 10,000 square feet that's going to have to be paved. Where's that water going to go? We live less than 100 feet from where it's potentially going to be. I was told it's going to go along the fence. Well, that can either take out that entire parking lot, which means that there is no parking for sports. There is no parking for the beach. I don't care about the boatyard that we have there now. The water table is such that my home sits in the water table. I have pumps that sit in the water on a regular basis. Never mind the noise. I was told that there wouldn't be lights, but we didn't have lights at the football field. Nobody asked me about that when they put them in. I wake up every Sunday morning, 8 a.m. to the national anthem, 7 times a day for Pop Warner football. And it's all day. It's going to be worse with this. I was told only daylight hours. Well, during the summer, that's 5 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Constant. The fact is, and I'll wrap up, the thing that's most disturbing to all of my neighbors is we weren't told, we weren't asked. When they wanted to put a dog park down there, at least they had the decency to let us know. When they filmed a movie there, they knocked on my door. We've heard nothing. There was nothing on the website for the town. There was nothing there's a Facebook group about pickleball. There wasn't even anything on that. What we're asking is stop. Just stop. Let's take a look at this. And I heard somebody talking about communication. Communicate with us. I pay too much in taxes to feel like I'm getting screwed again. So I hope that when it goes to town meeting, it's voted down. So, thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Anyone else? All right. Once, twice, gone.
David, can I say one more thing? Sorry. I'm glad that I think the entirety of the school committee's here tonight, so we kind of have a joint meeting, even though it's not a public meeting with all the school committee here. But I do want to let the school committee know that I do remember back in March, your then chair came to us and I'm going to use the word lecture, kind of in the same tone we heard tonight, this board about budgets, and then left right afterwards. But the next 3 hours we spent talking about the budget with the FinCom. Tonight, I want to encourage you not to leave, because tonight we're going to talk about the single largest tax increase that we're going to have to vote in the last decade for Swampscott residents. And so we want to understand your numbers, but we have another thing we got to deal with, right? And so it's great that you're all here. I hope that each one of the 5 of you stay tonight to listen to the fact that we're going to be told in a few minutes about the single largest tax increase, notwithstanding the school, because we're putting 100% of the reserves that we would use towards our tax rate to offsetting the price of a $100 million school tonight, which is why we have the largest single tax increase. And so things will get solved, but I do want you to take full advantage of the fact that all 5 of you are here. Don't talk to each other because you can't, because of violate open meeting laws, but I'm glad you're here so that we can share with you this information, because I know last time when the chair was here, we didn't get to share the information because you weren't able to stay. So I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. All right, we'll move on. We're going to talk about annual permit renewals, liquor licenses, common vics, entertainment, and Class 2 licenses. So is that, am I kicking this off to you, Angelica? Good. All right.
Yeah, there's a red. Yeah. It should be. There's a red ring around it, so it should be shared.
The bottom.
Is the screen being shared? Oh, that you.
We're ready to start?
We there?
There we go. Hi, I'm Angelica. I'm Chief Ruben Casada's assistant. And I have Marissa Meany from Community Development and Lieutenant Jonathan Locke here to talk with me as well. So I think only Doug is new on the board, so I'll go through this quickly, but feel free to stop me at any time. So I'll quickly run through the process. So liquor license is an all-year ordeal, but the annual renewals begin in October. So the ABCC reaches out to us, and they send us a packet explaining everything that we need to do. A list of all the active licensees is sent to the building department, police department, fire gets the list also. And then November is really when we start everything, making sure everything's done. So all licensees are required to submit a completed packet that includes the annual renewal form, liquor liability insurance. All licensees, all their responsible managers have to be fingerprinted at the police station, and then inspections are completed by building, police, and fire. The building department will confirm with me that everything is complete on their end. And then we also connect with the town treasurer to confirm that all of their accounts are up to date. And if one of these is not, if they're not in compliance with one of these, they will not be issued their license. So then that brings us to tonight. So obviously this presentation, and the select board will vote to approve the annual license. And then the renewal forms will be sent to the ABCC. We send a report back to the ABCC with all of the end results, and then the liquor license are delivered to the establishments right before the new year. It's important to note that an approved license will not be issued or physically given to the establishment if there are any pending items. Just as a side note, there were a few amendments this year. We had a transfer of license from Zest Friends to Dockside on Humphrey Street, and then we have change of managers at Bertucci's, Mission on the Bay, and the CNL Liquors did not renew. They were going to, and then they decided not to. So one thing that we do at the police station is fingerprints. This is the bylaw if you want to read it. So each manager has to come in annually, be fingerprinted, and then a lieutenant and the chief sign off on that to ensure that the manager is in compliance. And then, in addition, the police have two types of compliance checks. So the minimum age compliance, which I will ask if Lieutenant Locke can explain, but before that, I'll quickly go over the operations. So obviously, with the police patrolling the town, they drive by the establishments daily, and obviously if they see something, they go in. If they're on a park and walk on Humphrey Street, they'll walk in, make sure that if anyone has any questions, they can help them. If there's a disturbance, it's always communicated to the chief, and the follow-up is mandatory. We, to my knowledge, did not have anything this year. And then one last thing is, for the minimum age compliance checks, those are usually completed in the beginning of the year. With Detective Delano retiring, and we have now Detective Doyle and Detective Chandler. Both of them attended a training with the ABCC. It was this morning. So they got all new signage, which has already been distributed to the licensees, and they actually were trained on the minimum age compliance check. So the next step is to have them be recognized by the board as agents so that they can perform those minimum age compliance checks. And
again, Lieutenant Locke, as far as the minimum age compliance, we seek out a juvenile that you would not tend to think is younger than they are. That person's vetted through the police department, they're fingerprinted, photographed. Being that they're juvenile, we have to have their parents sign off that they're going to do this. And we take them to all establishments that have liquor licenses through the town, the state, and they're given a certain task. Exact same thing occurs at every establishment, so there's no deviation. And they're given a breathalyzer prior to going out, and they're giving a breathalyzer at the end of the night. And if there's any violations, they come out and we immediately address that violation that occurred. We walk right back in with the individual, and we take care of it then, and then we further that report up the chain to the board, and that happens just once a year right now. Anything else?
I don't think so. Are there any questions so far? Any questions?
I assume there's never a problem with that.
Okay.
I assume there's never a problem with that, with your cover work, or?
And this year, no. I believe last year, calendar year, there was one. There was one, I think, that was addressed through training, retraining. They came before the board at one point. I don't know if you were on the board at the time.
Okay.
I don't think that you were. We hosted a training through the ABCC. They came into the police station and gave the managers, so it was a lot of managers and owners came in just as a refresh to checking IDs and kind of reiterating what they already know that they obviously didn't do at that point in time. The ABC gives us the recommendation that these should be learning experiences. So that's why the board here too decided to do a training to fix that. So the fees are listed here. They range from $2,400 to $1,900, and then we have the bring your own bottle, which was the policy that the board put into play last year. That's $400. So the next is one-day permit and bring your own bottle. So the one-day permit, we're actually finalizing a new policy, which we'll go over today. There's a $50 application fee, and in 2023, we've had 28 to date with 2 pending. In 2022, we had 8 applications. Bring your own bottle, I don't know if I have to go over it too much. We just adopted it November 16th, 2022. That would allow a business that doesn't want to hold an annual license to allow patrons to bring their own beverages in, and we have strict rules as to what they can bring in and what they can't. The license quota, this is the most asked question. So right now, we're allowed 17 section 12 all alcoholic beverages. We've issued 13, so we have 4 available. For section 12, these are on premise, so these are restaurants, all restaurants for us. For wines and malts, we're allowed 5. We've issued 1, and there are 4 available. Separate to the quota, which is directly based off of the census, we have special license available through special legislation. So we have been issued 8, or we've been allowed 8. We've issued 2, leaving 6. So the special legislation is something that allows additional licensing on top of what the census allows. And for package stores, which is section 15 off-premise, ours actually, I think I mentioned this last year, with this census that came in 2020, the numbers did increase, so we're allowed 4 all alcoholic beverages. We've issued 2 available. 5 with wines and malts. We've issued 3, and there's 2 available. And this shows all of the license. You can see the red is restaurant all alcohol, clubs are blue, and so on. We do have 1 veterans club in town, and there are 2 licenses right now issued under special legislation. So like I said, those don't go against the quota. Those are issued under that special legislation. So this is the end of the liquor license. These are all of the license, and this is exactly what's pending. So we do have a few, I don't want to go through every single one of them, but all of them have turned in their, this might be a new PowerPoint from the one that you have. I sent this to Diane right before the meeting with the updates. So every business has paid their fee. They have all come in for fingerprints. The inspections are completed with the police, meaning they have all of their signs, and I have examples of the signs if you want to see them. So they have all of their signage, and there's a few businesses that are pending a balance owed to the town. A couple of them have been communicating to ask questions, but those licenses would not be issued or given to them without paying these balances before the end of the year. And then as far as their building inspections, I spoke with Steve Cummings today, who confirmed that the businesses who have re-inspections next to their name, those are minor issues. It could be a light bulb that's out, things like that, but he does want to go in and re-inspect, and the others had to cancel. They had an emergency, so they had to cancel, so those also will be done within, he said, the next couple of days into early next week. And that concludes the annual liquor license portion. Are there any questions before Marissa discusses the common victulars?
I have a quick question. When the
Sure.
building inspector goes in and they have to re-inspect, does the building inspector send you a notice, an official notice?
He issues the correct permit to the business and then communicates with me via email.
Okay.
He does have in a folder, he has all of the inspections that are directly related to this.
And are we able to go ahead and make a motion tonight? I know we're not done with the whole thing. On the condition that these things are completed, so we can, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the off-premise licenses, there were 4 allowed and 2 issued, and that doesn't include CNL, correct? They're not renewing. Nope, they're not. They were issued last year. Exactly. That only includes Burrell Street Liquors in Vinnon Square. Okay. Yep.
You want to, Mr. Chairman, is it fine if we actually just take a vote on this and go to the next thing, so we don't?
I would entertain a motion.
I would just ask that we, I just want to make sure, we have to issue them this month, correct? We're issuing this month for next year.
Exactly, yes.
I would just ask that we table the club all alcohol licenses. I have some questions I'd like to talk with the town administrator about.
Which one are those?
According to the sign here, it's St. John the Baptist Swampscott Club and Swampscott Yacht Club.
Is that a motion?
Oh, so I would make a motion to approve the liquor license renewals as set forth in the presentation, tabling the 3 all alcohol club licenses until next meeting. Approval of the licenses to be conditioned upon completion of the remaining items set forth in the presentation for reinspection and payment of balances.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, but I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
If we hold off on the all alcohol licenses until next meeting, there is no, from a timing perspective, there's no issue with these establishments getting their license in time from the ABCC?
As long as the meeting is before the end of the year. So if it's planned on the 20th, there's no issue.
Okay.
Okay. I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelica.
Moving on to common victualler licenses. So in the Community Development Office, we take care of 3 annual license renewals, the common victualler licenses, the entertainment licenses, and the Class 2 licenses. So common victualler licenses are essentially for any establishment that has indoor and or outdoor seating. Applications are generated by us. I actually, that's for entertainment actually. I generated a new application for the entertainment license that I distributed this year. But the common vic one is still the same as it has been. When the applications are received, I send them off to Jeff, our Director of Public Health, to have them endorsed. And then any renewed licenses will be issued to the applicant by the end of the year, and they're expected to hang them on the premises. And there's an annual renewal fee of $125. So here is the list. We have 38 establishments in town that require a common victualler license. Currently, there are 4 that are pending in that they have not turned in their application to me. So I'm still missing an application from Bertucci's, Five Guys, and Starbucks, and Renzo's Pizza on Essex Street. It's actually, I did get an application from Bertucci's today, but I cannot consider it complete because they have not sent in their check yet. It is in the mail, so I hope to receive it by the end of the week. Five Guys and Starbucks, it's going to be a little bit of a chase because these corporate chains are a little hard to track down. Their local store really doesn't handle licensing operations. It's usually forwarded to some sort of corporate office, and it seems like there's turnover every year. So it's hard a lot of the time for me to get in touch with anybody in those offices, but I will persist. So that is essentially the gist of the common victualler licenses. Any questions before I move on to entertainment?
Apparently I'm in charge, so Peter, if you wanted to.
Yeah, apparently you're in charge.
Does anybody have any questions?
Should we take a vote on this?
As David says, I'll entertain a motion.
So I'm sorry, so which ones are we not voting for tonight?
We are not going to be voting for Bertucci's, Five Guys, Starbucks, or Renzo's. I hope to have all of them by the 20th.
Was it possible to take a vote pending on they return the
Contingent on.
information? Contingent on?
I believe that's been done in the past, yeah.
That's what we just did on the last one, so.
Yeah.
Keep it going.
So I'll move to approve these common vic licenses contingent on the 4 completing their process.
Second.
Any additional questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Awesome. So moving on to entertainment. So not all of our establishments having a common victualler license require an entertainment license, but a bulk of them do. I have here 15 or so establishments that have requested an entertainment license or license renewal. And this can range in anything from as, I guess, I don't know, low-key as background music playing in a restaurant to, you know, having a DJ or live performances at a venue. The annual renewal fee for an entertainment license is $125. I'm actually, for the next year going forward, I'm actually looking at some comps from other municipalities in the area to see if we can establish a fee scale. It doesn't necessarily seem fair at times to have somebody who just requires a TV or background music to pay the same fee as somebody who's having games and live music, but that's, you know, up to debate for you guys as well, with you guys as well. I did change the application format this year. If you guys would like to see a copy of any of the licenses, I have them here, or applications, I have them here. Oops. So these are some of the businesses that have, or these are all of the businesses that have requested an entertainment license. I do not have any pending applications. They have all been turned in, they have all been paid for. And these are some of the entertainment forms that they are requesting. And if anybody has any questions, I'll take those now too.
I have a question. If it's an outdoor, if they have indoor and outdoors, does the entertainment license cover outdoor?
It does. Yes.
So, and have you had any complaints from any entertainment complaints from any of these establishments?
I have had some complaints about Dockside Pub. So it opened at the beginning of September, and I did have some complaints from some of the neighbors on Humphrey Street and on Blaney Terrace about the volume of the outdoor music. I did speak with the police department, and it just seemed like there was a misconnection, we'll put it that way, that the business owner didn't realize that the volume of the indoor music was triggering the volume in the outdoor music. He should have them on two separate systems. And so the outdoor music should be much softer in decibel level, whereas the indoor music is a little bit higher. So I want to say I received that complaint maybe beginning to mid-October, and I haven't heard anything since. It is, we're in winter season, so outdoor dining isn't really happening right now, so I can't, it's hard to predict whether or not that same complaint is going to arise as the warm weather picks up again next year. But that is a complaint that was received.
So the only issue that I have with all these, well, I'm sure they're also new, and
Right.
it's probably gonna take a little bit of time for them to work things out.
Sure.
But the only issue I have is that is at 1 a.m. in the morning. And when
Yes.
we voted on this, I actually asked why that was 1 a.m. And the answer I received was because that's what Zest Friends was. And this week I did a little bit of research, and Zest Friends was not until 1 a.m. but until 10.
Right, I believe they had, I think 1 a.m. is what is on their liquor license, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think they just wanted the entertainment hours to reflect the hours on their liquor license. I don't know why they said it was the same as Zest Friends, because I do know Zest Friends finished their entertainment at 10 o'clock as well. I mean, also the nature of the two establishments are very different. Zest Friends was a cafe, this is a bar and grill. So, it would make sense for a bar and grill to want to extend their entertainment to 1 a.m. And again, that's to reflect the hours on their liquor license.
Well, there's no one here saying that there was a problem, so,
Right.
But, it is a little, it is a little concerning to me, but it seems like it's working out. So far, it seems like it's working out.
So there's no change. What you're presenting us is the exact same entertainment licenses that are in place today.
With the exception of Dockside Pub, as they're a new establishment.
No, but we did an entertainment license for Dockside Pub.
You approved it earlier.
We approved
We
it.
approved
Oh,
it
right,
earlier this
the
year,
initial one that you approved
but
this year,
The one
correct.
we approved is identical to the one that's now
Correct.
being before. So we approved live music at Dockside Pub.
You did, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Could you give us the highlights of what's different on the application?
Sure. So
Just
I don't know how well you can see. I took out some of those questions about,
the application was pretty absurd at one point, so I just want to make sure some of those things are what you removed.
that's the bulk of what I took out.
Right.
I also, so license information, I asked them to select between annual, 1 day, or a multi-day
Yep.
license. Applicant information goes here, business information here. I asked them to write down their hours of operation here, signature here, and then I have this handy entertainment table. So we have standard entertainment, which includes background music or TVs, live entertainment, so dancing, DJ, karaoke, trivia, live band, and then accessory items, so arcade games, board games, a jukebox, that kind of thing. So I asked all establishments to check off what is applicable, and then if there is a number associated, like how many pieces in a live band, I asked them to demark that number too, a number of TVs, that kind of thing. So I think it's a lot more simple.
Thank you. And current, probably.
Sorry?
And current, probably.
Marissa, just a quick question. Are we actually charging the Swampscott Senior Center, $125?
No, they had their fee waived.
Good, thank you.
My only other question is, I still don't understand our entertainment license jurisdiction at all, right? But putting that aside, I've pretended we've had jurisdiction, so I'm just gonna keep pretending, I guess. Help me understand, so you made a statement that a lot of our common victulars also get entertainment licenses, but you don't need to have a common victular, you need an entertainment license, correct? There's no correlation between the two. You could actually serve no food whatsoever, but you could have entertainment as a business and need an entertainment license. Yes?
I guess in theory, yes, but in our case in town here, there isn't, anybody that has an entertainment license has a common victualler license. Even like the VFW, for example, they have a common victualler license because they have a kitchen, and even though they don't necessarily cook food on the premises, they have catered events, and then they have indoor seating as well. So therefore, they have a common victualler license, and then in order to have entertainment at their venue, they have an entertainment license as well.
So I would just ask you to take a look and try and align liquor licenses with entertainment licenses and see if anybody with a liquor license doesn't have an entertainment license and
Okay.
they have one, because I think you'll find that we don't correlate on that.
Okay.
And all of our liquor licensees don't have victulars licenses.
Right, like some of the convenience stores, I guess, for example.
Nope,
or-
I'm going a little differently, but you'll
Sure.
you'll
Okay.
you'll find it.
I'll do my research.
Think private clubs. You'll
I'm sorry, the private clubs do not have common vic
I
licenses?
believe
or-
they don't, we have one or more private clubs that doesn't have a common victular renewal here, but
Okay.
that has a liquor license but doesn't have an entertainment license, and I think,
And they should.
yeah, I just
Okay.
want to be consistent. I just want everybody to kind of play by the
Absolutely.
same rules.
I'd make a motion to approve these entertainment licenses as proposed. And certainly, you know, Dockside seems like it's rocking, which is great, and, but maybe needs to continue to be careful that it's not rocking too late, too loud. But motion to approve as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And so the last part of this presentation is the Class 2 renewals. These are for our used auto sales in town. Really no change from last year. The only auto shop to not renew their Class 2 license was GERALYN Motors on Paradise Road across from the CITKO station. So that narrowed it down to just 4 Seasons on Puritan and Paradise Auto Sales, the CITKO on Paradise Road, and they are the same 2 establishments that are renewing their licenses this year. They paid their annual fee of $125. And they are requesting the same number of cars as they did last year, 6 at 4 Seasons and 4 at Paradise CITKO. And if you have any questions about inspections for that, I'm happy to pass it back to Officer Locke.
Wait, does that mean that at any given time, they're only selling 4 vehicles?
Correct.
Oh, not really.
Oh, I stand corrected.
Welcome to the party.
Oh, not really.
No, I mean, I know we
In
talked
theory-
about this in years past.
Four Season Auto currently, I think, has 58 vehicles online for sale if anybody wants one of the 58.
On the premises is,
No, I understand. I understand the difference of premise, but they also bring the car to the premises for servicing and conveyance. So the only thing they don't do is show it on the premises, which I believe we've continued to struggle with and has been the continuous issue with neighbors because it creates a higher intensity, and which is what this is about.
Right.
It's about volume of intensity. And we've never gotten to the bottom of it. I'm not saying we're doing anything differently tonight, but I'm just pointing out that they sell a lot more.
Mr. Spells, under Mass General Law, there's no regulations for when they sell cars online. So that's where I believe that higher volume of vehicles are coming and going that you're speaking of. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, they're just they're transacting though at this premises. They're not, historically, I think they acknowledged the last time we had an enforcement action with them that they actually do the closing. They bring the car there, they service the car, they sticker the car, they license the car, and they close on the car on premises. But you're right, the vehicle itself isn't located on premises.
Right.
When someone's clicking on the website and saying, I like it, but everything else about the deal is happening on premises. And I'm raising it again I believe we're fooling ourselves when we just say we are doing 6 vote. However, I'm just again pointing out the fact that we We know there's a set of facts on the ground that cause greater intensity in that use than what the license represents, and to me, it actually undermines the license. I don't even care about the license, frankly. I think this is zoning, and zoning, I don't understand why state law has a separate classification process for vehicle sales licenses, but it does. So I don't have a problem per se under zoning for it. I'm just pointing out here, it's one of these things that we're voting for a license that on its face,
It's fictitious.
it does not feel like it's followed. But it is, again, we're going on many years of that at this point. I do have another question just on Paradise Auto Sales, which is about inspection there. They have a enormous volume of cars that they store on site, and it's only gotten bigger. Well, maybe not bigger, now that they've expanded. But I just want to make sure that we're really comfortable that it's 4 vehicles that they're selling. They put cars everywhere.
Right. And
So-
they've been doing service to vehicles, like you're saying.
Yep.
As of times with the checks and the logbooks and everything else, 100% in compliance for that purpose. As far as what vehicles they have on service, you might see a couple extra stickers over there because they service the vehicles from the other building. But I understand what you're saying as far as the volume of cars coming and going.
So as for GERALYN Motors, I know they didn't renew their license in, this year or for next year, but they're not selling automobiles out of that location?
They should not be. They're not authorized to.
But there's no inspection to make sure they're not, it's only inspection to make sure they're following when they apply, right?
Yeah.
No.
No, Sergeant Doyle went there today. She went there again. She did a triple check, today to make sure before this meeting, everything was in compliance. So,
Okay.
she said that they were not, to her knowledge, selling. Obviously, they don't have a logbook there, but it didn't occur. It's not to say that they're not, but to her knowledge, they're not.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So with any other questions, comments, thoughts, motions?
Yeah, keep it on a roll.
I'm all motion out. I'll move to approve the Class 2 license renewal procedures.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Sean, so before we get on to our next piece of business, I think we had something that was, that we were going to address during the town administrative report.
We do.
Okay.
I actually would like to call, well, I'd like to recognize one of our illustrious citizens, John Piccarello, for his extraordinary artwork. John, we actually had a famous tree in Swampscott, an elm tree outside of Town Hall that unfortunately had to come down. And John has, made a lifetime of service, and he has taken some time to recognize 2 of Swampscott's most dedicated employees, individuals that began their career as young men and dedicated their entire life to public service. Both Chief Madigan and Chief Breen are here tonight. I had an opportunity to work with them over the first 5 years of my tenure here, and frankly, I haven't worked with 2 finer individuals. They have really set a standard for public service. I know John doesn't like the limelight, but John, you too, are in that same standard of service. You care about this community, you care about the people, you dedicate your lives to keeping them safe and supporting all the things that make this country great. You grew up in this town, you bleed blue, as they say, and John, would you please come down and present your artwork? The idea was to actually present this to you both at town meeting, and so I may have to bring you back for a celebratory round of applause, but frankly, John has fashioned these many months ago, and he has been really, excited to actually present these to you. And if you would come down, and John, if you would just hold those up so folks can see those. John, you got to get mic'd up.
Make their own decision.
Kevin's older than me, so.
John, just if you don't know, John Piccarello. John, how many years were you chair of the ERAC committee? You still serve on it, but I'll say greater than 2 decades. And John's a veteran, but certainly, John, I never knew you were an artist. I mean, this is really a surprise too. Any other tricks that you have? All right, a woodworker. I'm sorry. Gentlemen, John has given you an opportunity to pick your vase. I know that Chief Madigan has talked to me about finding vases in secondhand stores. So, Chief, this must be a little bit of a
Treasure.
a surprise to you. So
You might see it on the roadshow or something.
that's great. John, can you tell us a little bit about the tree and the wood? You need the mic. Sorry. I'm sorry.
We just want to make sure everybody at home can hear you.
These are from the beech tree that was cut down at the town hall lawn on Elmwood. I thought it was very appropriate that, as you spent many years going into that town hall for one reason or another, meetings, for any reason, that you should have a piece of that tree to remind you of those days, those meetings, those times through those doors. And I hope you use it, and it's meant to be used, it's meant to be handed down with the reason you have it and where it came from. So please pick one and enjoy.
Yeah, why don't we just get a quick picture? And then you both can give us a little speech about what it's like to be retired. Just kidding. All right. Everybody move over so you can.
This is for them. They don't need this.
You can just sit down.
That's fine.
Additional significance that comes from a historic tree on the town hall lawn is even more special. If we ever lose the big tree on town hall lawn, I know my daughter will cry. Favorite tree.
I see the beach on it, on Swampscott Park.
Are you asking for another bowl?
Just in case. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Chiefs.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. I know you missed these meetings, you know.
Thank you very much.
Nice job, John. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
John?
Chief, thank you. All right, sounds great.
Thanks, John. I'm glad, John Piccarello, glad we were able to get that in. So thanks, John. Thanks, Chiefs. Appreciate it.
You can find John's fine craftsmanship at local craft shows, because I saw him week before last. It won't be the beech tree from Town Hall, but you two could have a John Piccarello original.
That's great.
One more.
Yeah.
Might be hot.
John, you just got a free plug.
Yeah, that's right. Do you have one? I do not.
I do.
John, when's the next craft show for folks that may want to get a bowl of their own? All right.
Oh.
A consignment job of 60 bowls? Oh, wow. That's great.
Lovely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna have a discussion and possible vote of a new one-day liquor license policy. I'll turn that over to Angelica,
Me again.
our one-day liquor license professional.
Okay, yeah. So, the town did have, I don't know if everyone is aware, but the town did have, a one-day license policy in place, but it just seemed a little bit outdated. So, we were asked to put together a new policy, and this is a very first rough draft. So obviously, any questions, comments, please send them my way, because there's a lot more to put in here, and to learn. So very general, we're presenting that the applicant would complete an application, and the application would answer or ask for date, times, obviously all the general information, where the event will be, who the server is. But one thing we do want to add is a floor plan, and this will be discussed later. That's mainly for safety and security. So we're also going to possibly change the application to be received 14 days prior to the event. That will also have to coincide with select board meetings, so we would just want to make sure that if a person sends us the application, there is an upcoming board meeting within 14 days. The fee right now is $50, and that would remain the same. It would also require, which we do right now, we require tip certification. It doesn't say for all servers, but I feel that it's necessary for all of the servers. Just in case someone steps away, you want to make sure the person has their tip certification. They also have to provide a certificate of liability, approval from the property owner, and if they are a nonprofit, we do require the 501c3 determination letter, which I believe is actually part of the ABC rules and regulations. So again, you can see the permits issued have increased since 2021. Obviously, during COVID, there wasn't many. 2022, we had 8, and then now we have 28 year-to-date with 2 pending. So general ABCC rules and regulations. So this all falls under MGL Chapter 138, Section 14. The ABCC puts out a couple general rules and regulations, but they really leave it up to the LLA, which obviously is the select board in the town of Swampscott. So a few things is that the special permits are issued for 1 single day. We do allow a rain date. That's obviously okay. This is the sale of wines and or malt beverages to any person or business. It's not just a restaurant. Any individual can apply for a 1-day license. And this would be, so just for wines and malts, unless it is a nonprofit organization, they're allowed to serve all alcoholic beverages. I did ask the ABC. They said it's under the law, falls under the law, but they don't know the thoughts behind the legislation. That's just what it is. So they couldn't really give me an answer. And then a couple of restrictions is that the LLA cannot issue special permits to any person or business for more than 30 calendar days per year. At that point, they would probably be in their best interest to get an annual license. And you can't have an on-premise license pending. So for example, I want an all alcoholic beverage license for such premise. I can't then apply for a 1-day license in the meantime. And then any premise that has an alcoholic beverage license, the business can apply for the license, for the 1-day license, as long as it's not on their premise. And then one other thing is that the beverages must be purchased from an authorized source and delivered to the event. So, for example, if Cafe Avellino is hosting, she can't bring bottles from Cafe Avellino. She actually has to make a special order. And that's an ABCC rule, and we have been enforcing that, because I know the events on Town Hall lawn, they've delivered alcohol. Are there any questions?
Yeah, actually, I just, for your sake, everyone's sake, I mean, I know I've read through the detailed policy. I don't want you to have to feel like you have to go through every slide. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the board, if people had a chance to read the actual policy, if have questions, ready to move on, or if we need to kind of go through each slide.
I read it. Okay.
I'm comfortable.
I think the only major changes to point out is that the board wanted to put in some more safety and security in our policy. So obviously, we want to display the license, check identification, and I think one of the few new things is utilizing wristbands or stamps. So it would be something similar to that for age verification, and then the beverage sales are limited, and the beverages have to be opened. The alcohol has to remain on the within the designated areas. I know obviously that kind of goes without saying, but that's not listed in our policy. Now it will be. Obviously MGL, and I think that's it. Are there any questions or any edits that we want to add?
Can I just ask, where's our current policy posted?
It should be on the website. I have it. I could email it to
Right,
you.
so I just, if we can, like all these things, what happens, I think we do these things and we have them, but we haven't, and again, it's somewhat fault of the template that we use for our town website. But if we can just find a way to make sure this is one of those things that someone was to just use the search bar on our website and
They can
say
find it.
liquor license and just do liquor license, that policy in addition to anything else, applications for anything having to do with liquor show up, that would be great.
We started that. It's still pending. We haven't finished it, but hopefully this will be the last portion of it.
Great.
I really appreciate, Angelica, that you've kind of seen this through and pulling this all together, so. Looks like it's much improved from what we had before.
Absolutely. Do I hear a motion?
Can I just ask one more question?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What does enforcement look like of the policy?
As far as,
Like, for example, I know we say everything has to be opened, right? But we've all been to events where, you know, they hand you 2 beers and one's not open, and,
Yeah.
you know, everything's supposed to stay in that fenced-in area, but we've all been to events where, you know, there are obviously people either, you know, outside of the fenced-in area, and, like, yes, well, maybe no harm has come from that, like, there's also a policy for a reason, right, to prevent harm from happening, so what's the,
I think this would probably be the next step with the police and fire chief to talk about things that we can implement. I know that certain events don't necessarily warrant having a police detail there, but if the officer is there, I think though that they're mostly there for security measures, not
Right.
ensuring, so that's probably something that maybe I could look into and ask other towns what they do. We did add in a section to the policy that says if they do violate, the board has just, so the police and fire have the discretion to stop the event right there, if something serious occurs. And then the select board has the authority to not give them another. So maybe just having that in the policy stating, maybe that will help to not have that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's a good idea to just explore how to, I don't think it should slow this down, but I think it
Yeah.
should be additive, like, make sure the chiefs are comfortable with how they feel like they can enforce or not.
right.
I
I
think
just
that's
feel like if people think there are no consequences, then the policy's great, but
absolutely.
they won't, like, really stick to it. And if we sort of reinforce, like, there are ramifications if you don't, and this is what they could be, then hopefully more
Yeah.
people will toe the line.
I'd make a motion to approve the policy, the revised one-day liquor license policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Angelica.
And Angelica, if we could maybe put it on like a 2 or 3 year cycle to just look at these things more frequently, that way maybe we can revisit it in a couple years.
Mr. Town Administrator.
To Mr. Town Administrator.
Yes, we can certainly do that. We can date this, just put a date on the form, and then we'll circle back around, you know,
And we'll
every
post
year,
it on-
but we'll do it every 3 years, because we talk about this every year.
Right.
When you started that, Katie, I thought you were gonna say every 2 or 3 months. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's not necessary.
I do think, you know, there are gonna be, every year, we'll probably learn a little thing or two about how we can improve it. And so I think every year, when we talk about it, it will be good to kind of just bring this out, make sure that we're mitigating risk and just ensuring that all these events are safe but fun.
Thanks again, Angelica.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angelica.
Yeah,
Appreciate
we'll,
it.
yeah, we'll move on. Discussion and vote on the fiscal year '24 tax rate classification, and We have members.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question about this? So my understanding is that we didn't notice a public hearing on this, so this is actually not our classification hearing. Am I correct on that?
That's
So
correct.
we're going to be doing this again and formally on the 20th of December, which in light of that, I would just ask that maybe we limit tonight, because we have to go through this and do this all again. I would just ask that perhaps we limit this to the very abbreviated version and post this material online, so residents can see this in advance of the 20th and see this material here, just because this is an hour-long presentation and with questions, and we're going to be doing it the exact same thing in 2 weeks. I thought that tonight was going to be the night, but I understand that it wasn't noticed, so it's not our public hearing on this, so I would just.
Yeah, the thought is that we're gonna be, meeting on the 11th, before town meeting.
Why are we doing it on the 11th why can't we do the classification on the 20th? And we've done this before. We've gone to town meeting and said, town meeting,
We have, I'm
So we need to have
certain-
enough, conversation tonight to get comfortable with what's being recommended at town meeting. I'm just saying,
got you.
if we need to go through an hour and a half of it, that's awesome. We're gonna have to do the exact same thing in a public hearing on the 11th, or.
Peter, we went through this presentation earlier, and we were like, we can get through this.
Do you wanna give me a time and we can clock it and see? Cause I've never seen you hit the times you've offered me.
I know.
So I'm taking the
all right.
over 100%.
I will say,
Amy's taking the over as well.
Order. This isn't DraftKings.
Amy's doing it,
I know.
so it's the under. It's the under if it's Amy.
I can get my material done in less than.
So look at it. It's a really important. I'm not trying to shortcut the
Yeah.
presentation here, but I'm just
I know.
having sat through this presentation, it is extremely dense, and I don't also want to purposely be fast to
Sure.
go over it. And so it just
We're gonna have a couple of bites at this apple, so I hear you.
we can go
Let's-
through it.
I got a process question. This is a
Yeah.
curveball for me. What's the thing about the hearing?
Yeah,
How does that
So
work
there's-
with?
Mass General
with-
law, it has to be in public, has to be a public hearing.
Yeah, it's
You notify-
normal, you have
why
open
did
up a
we-
hearing.
Okay, let me
and-
just finish my question, sorry. But we do have, as you said, we have a special town meeting on Monday, so you seem to have some way around the fact that we're gonna have a discussion tonight, town meeting on Monday, and then a hearing after?
So let me tell you what he can answer the question, but I'm gonna tell you what my special way is that in a past year or years, the select board has indicated and supported a recommendation of the use of free cash to offset tax levy. That ultimately allowed the FinCom to talk and have a conversation before the 11th. We don't actually have to vote on our classification hearing. We can actually vote on our classification hearing after town meeting appropriates it, because it's just subject to us then doing the classification, which uses that amount. So that's why I can go out of sequence. I cannot answer the question as to why we're not having a public hearing tonight. So I have to turn that
So,
over to the.
in prior years, we've had several meetings, preliminary review of values, before the board got comfortable, in terms of, what amount of free cash to allocate to offset the levy, or just get comfortable with the value. So this is a dense presentation, a lot of information, a lot of historical data. And so generally, we're giving this presentation for the public, but also the board. And so we want everybody to kind of be aware, this is how we set taxes, this is how we budget, this is how we trend in terms of, the county, but also peer communities. So there's a lot of analysis involved.
So, I mean, I've dug into this, I get this. I imagine all my fantastic fellow board members have done the same. So I'm just trying to Peter's point, we certainly want this to be educational for the town as well. If we go through it in detail tonight, do we actually need to do it again for the hearing? Can we do one or the other?
We can do whatever the board likes. I do think it's helpful to kind of go through, just the changes in value, get a sense of, where we stand, in that historical perspective in terms of levy, and then, get a sense of where the budget is and where our reserve fundings levels are. We can probably do all that in 30 minutes if we get to it. And then we can do it, an abbreviated version of that.
Does the presentation need to happen in public meeting?
I'm sorry.
In a hearing.
I'm sorry, public hearing, sorry. Does
Yes.
the presentation have to happen in public hearing?
When the board votes the values, that has to be a public hearing.
No, that's not the question. Does the presentation that's about to occur, that's going to be over an hour, have to occur in a public hearing?
No, this is an update.
So we don't have to do it
So-
twice.
Right, but I think, so, look at, I can count on one hand probably the number of people who have come to our classification hearings. But part of the reason they come to it is because there's a Mass General Law that requires public notification for a public hearing. And that's why Mass General Law requires that, right? It's kind of like the hear ye, we're setting your taxes, show up and complain or cheer. So I don't know, have we noticed that? Is that notice for the 11th? The 11th, right before town meeting, certainly does not seem like a time that we're really honestly welcoming people 10 minutes before we're going to vote on it to tell us their opinions.
Right.
So there just seems to be a lot of, again, I get it, a lot of moving things going on here, but I want to live to the spirit, even though I can count in one hand the number of people who have come, just because I think it's important. And because, by the way, this ain't good news. Right, on top of it all, this ain't good news. And so, anyways, let's go, whatever the under is, I'm taking the under if Amy's doing the presentation. And I don't want to, my comments shouldn't diminish at all the amount of work that our assessing team has to do in this, and I really am grateful for all the work. I understand that there may be, the Board of Assessors may need to do some other things that haven't done, I don't know, but I do appreciate staff's efforts to date on this, so please don't infer my remarks as diminishing the importance of what you all do. It's more about trying to be a little bit more efficient, but we've now used 10 minutes talking about saving 10 minutes, so perhaps I've no longer been efficient, so. It's whatever the chair thinks he should.
Thanks, Peter.
Diane, can you pull that presentation?
Amy?
What is the time? Because I am taking the under.
Your time's up.
30? All right.
No questions.
I was gonna say, you guys can chime in with your questions. And you can also save them for the public hearing. All right. Hey, Diane, you can just skip this slide too.
It seems to be stuck.
Okay. No, you guys can, I don't want to pretend like I can do assessing.
I do want to take a moment to thank the chair of the school committee for staying.
So
We all are.
We will be providing an overview of the values changes, yearly trends and comparisons, as well as an FY 23-24 budget review, as well as reviewing the next step. The overview of the process was the Board of Assessors determines the assessed values. The board was scheduled to approve values on November 20th. Vote was completed on November 27th. The assessing department's also responsible for determining new growth and the budget all play into determining the levy. The board, at your discretion, can allocate a portion of the levy to residential properties and on to commercial, industrial, and personal property through the shift. You guys know how to read, so. Yeah. So I will defer to Cheryl, our assessor, as well as Dick Simmons, our former assessor, to actually talk about values on the next slide.
So the first slide is an overview of comparing 23 values to 24 values. Noteworthy here is most residential property is up about 9%. Commercial is less, it's about 6%. Skim over that. If anybody has any questions, you can stop me.
Next slide.
Next slide is commercial, industrial, and personal property values. Overall, there's a 45% increase since 2019. This is the market as a whole. It's not unique to Swampscott.
Next slide.
Residential values. Again, as mentioned earlier, there's about a 9% increase over last year's values. There's a comparison here going back to 2019. Median assessed values for condominiums, the 24 median assessed value was $401,100. For single families, it's $750,700. For multifamilies, we're at $740,000, and commercial industrial combined is $649,800, and those are median.
Next slide.
The average assessed values is, there shows similar increases as median values. I won't spare you reading those off.
Next slide.
New growth. New growth is down a lot from 23. I've talked to some of our peer towns, neighbors, and it seems like new growth is down across the board for many towns.
Just want
I would
Okay,
hold
that reflects half a year, correct, or not?
No, it's a full year.
full year.
No?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
This is all time, this is all equal time?
Yes.
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 Everything's a full fiscal year.
Thank you.
Keep in mind the years, the time period that new growth applies to for fiscal year '24 ended. So we know our new growth number.
Okay.
From Patriot Properties, one of the biggest contributors to the decline from last year to this year is, last year was White Court, which is about $38 million project. So there aren't, during COVID, there was quite a bit of building going on, and those seemed to finish around 22, 23. There wasn't anything that really finished in 23, and there's a few things in the pipeline, but basically it is what it is, and we're not alone in this. I'm gonna skip this. Next, Amy.
So this slide is just an overview of the average single-family tax bill from 2014 to 2023, a comparison of Swampscott to Essex County. So in 2014, we were about 38% higher than Essex County, and we are as of last year, we were only 13% higher, so we were coming closer to Nexus. Next slide. This is an overview of the average single-family values from 2014 to 2023. Swampscott is outpacing Essex County. It was a smaller delta back in 2014, and it is about a 16% delta in 2023. Next slide. Mr. Town Administrator, do you still want to talk on this slide?
Sure. Over the last 10 years, we've seen a significant reduction in the variance between the average single-family tax bill and Swampscott. We got as close as $690 higher than the average last year. Our taxes went up due to the debt service of the new school, and so we're about a little bit over $1,100 higher than the average of Essex County. Next slide. So we've looked at peer communities. This is a group of peer communities we've been looking at over the last 6 years. They have similar real estate characteristics of Swampscott, Rockport, Winthrop, Hamilton, Hull, Newburyport, Situate, Manchester by the Sea. We could grab any number of them, but we wanted to get a sense, how do we stack up, not just to the county, but communities that have similar demographics? So next slide. You can see, we've been as high as 10% higher, but over the last 6 years, we've come down from 8 to 5% higher, to 4% higher, to 2% higher, to literally less than 1% higher. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we are right within a group of peer communities. So while we may have a high average single-family tax bill, we are within our peer communities. Next slide. This is the average single-family tax bill against our peer community. So we're as high as 29% higher. It's come down to about 3% higher. That gives us another indication that we've moved more towards the middle. This isn't a race to, make Swampscott most affordable or, the least expensive community. We're trying to get to some sense of balance. A lot of hard work has gone into this. This is revising every single contract we've had in town, really looking carefully at every bottom line and managing expenses as carefully as we possibly can. Here's a next slide. Everybody talks about Marblehead. A few years ago, Marblehead historically had a much lower average single or family tax bill than Swampscott. Over the last few years, Swampscott actually has become a little bit more affordable than Marblehead. And so a lot of that has to do with how we've really reformatted our budget. We went to a number of years of zero-based budgeting. We really looked at how do we make Swampscott a little bit more affordable. We're not that much less expensive than Marblehead, but every little bit helps. Next slide. Conversely, commercial taxes, we see it's a lot more expensive to own a business in Swampscott. We pay as much as 53% more. Unfortunately, that's just a relationship to the size of our town geographically. We don't have a lot of land, and it's just a lot more expensive to own a business in Swampscott. We look at the next slide, the average commercial industrial tax bill, significantly higher. It's been as high as 78%. Right now, it's about 64% higher than the average of Essex County. It's a lot more expensive to own a business in Swampscott. I don't know how we change that, but it's just important that we recognize that fact.
Well, Sean, what's the average shift in Essex County?
1.75 is the answer.
Yeah. Well, Peter, like, we thought that we could maybe drop it down to 1.75, 1.65 to give small businesses or give our business community some help. We didn't see that actually attributed to any additional economic development for the town. I think it's better for us to kind of look at ways that the town can actually support economic development by funding, $100,000 to look at Vinton Square, or looking at community and economic development and making investments in, how the streetscape on Humphrey Street looks. There are other ways to help businesses.
I was just responding to your why is commercial so expensive here, is they are taxed at 1.75 times. I'm just saying, and so I'm answering the question because that actually is the reason.
It is. But yeah, and some communities don't have a split. Marblehead doesn't have a split.
Right.
But generally, these businesses do place burdens on communities, and I know there's a philosophy out there that thinks, some people think that there should be a single rate. I disagree, given the...
I hear you, but the only reason I'm answering the question is because, again, in the long version of this discussion, the long diversion would say, well, let's go back and look at that Marblehead comp, which I hate the comp to begin with, but fine, let's look at it. They don't have a split.
Right.
If they had a split, then tell me what Marblehead's average single-family tax bill would be, because then you would see something. If you're going to use true dollars, it's a very different story. I'm just saying that they've made a value choice. We've made a value choice, right? In communities, every community is going to do it differently here. So I just want to own that we've made it. It's been like that for 20 plus years, and we only recently came down to 1.7. But I know your recommendation includes a recommendation to go back up to 1.75. So I'm just saying
Well, there's other things going on in this. I thought we were just letting the presentation happen right now and asking questions.
No, look, so we're on the next slide. So this is the average, like you can see over the years. It's been as high as $16,000 more, 10 years ago, and now we're back up to 16. Last year we were at 17. It's a little lower this year based on some changes in valuation. So.
Next one's mine.
Next portion of this presentation is over to our finance team, Amy Sarro and Patrick Luddy. You have
You're
5
taking
minutes.
up more of my time.
All right.
The tax policy, we have 5 major components of the tax policy: setting the budget, estimating our local receipts, any small business exemptions and residential exemptions, the application of any free cash reserves to mitigate the tax increases, which is Monday's town meeting, and the split tax rate, which is the shift that was just being discussed. Next slide, I'm going to turn this over to our treasurer.
Sure. So the next few slides are just highlights of how we come up with the tax rates, all that boils down to. First, we tally all the appropriations that town meeting has made since we last set the tax rate. Next slide. Then we account for our state assessments. It's primarily MBTA assessments and assessments related to charter school tuitions. Compared to last year, these charges are $90,000 higher. Next slide. This slide tallies up all of the revenue that needs to be raised in total to cover the appropriations and the charges. Next slide. Then we have to account for our expenses. So state aid comes right off the top. Excuse me, I got that backwards. State aid reduces the levy. That's a revenue source. Primarily, that's going to be our unrestricted government aid and our Chapter 70 aid for education. And this is up $305,000 versus last year. Next slide. Then we compute our local receipts estimates based on what we've seen in the last 6 months since the fiscal year began, what we've seen over the last 3 to 5 fiscal years, and identify what we can count on as a revenue source conservatively beyond our property tax levy. Next slide. Then we tally all that up and we compute the net estimated levy. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Amy to talk about our reserves.
I just asked, is there a slide in here that shows us what we budgeted compared to your reforecasted number so we understand? And I apologize, I don't see it, but you've made some reforecasting assumptions.
Yes.
but I don't see the budget in here, so I don't know what you've come off with, so it doesn't tell me the assumptions you've made. Is there a slide? I'm just wondering if there's.
There's not, but I can make one for you before the public hearing.
Yeah, if we can please have one, just to understand. It just helps us understand how aggressive or not, or what's the reason you're making such an assumption. It will just give us a check of that.
Yeah, the slide 26 does show the FY '23 budget to actual, but yes, I will get you that for our public hearing.
Thanks.
So our free cash certification, we were certified at 3.7. You see it reflected here as 3,585,000 because that's net of the opioid money that is reserved for that appropriation. Our financial policy that was adopted has a maintenance of 3 to 5% of the operating budget in free cash. This currently has us at 5.11% prior to any uses. On the next slide is an overview of our other financial reserves. So our general stabilization and capital stabilization were building up since 2016. We utilized a portion of both of those last year. The financial policy indicates 9 to 10% for the general stabilization and 2 to 4% for capital stabilization. As of right now, both of those are slightly below the low end of the threshold, just due to last year they were voted down to the low end. New budget got appropriated. That's how percentages work.
It's girl math.
Yeah. Next slide.
So we're going to touch on quickly the new school debt. We made our first payments on the new school in fiscal '23. Going back to the origination of the project, before it was approved, we extensively modeled the tax impact that may have to the residents and the businesses. So this is just a snapshot of that original model based on those assumptions, and I'm going to walk through what's changed since. Next slide. To recap, the initial bond issued for the school construction project was done in March of '22, and that was done front-loaded to address the interest rate risk. The markets have risen since then, and it's much more costly to borrow now. So that was what the Finance Committee and the Select Board urged us to do, and we did that successfully. So that's the position we're in now. We're servicing that debt. Next slide. And as part of the original conversation about the school, we determined that we were going to strive within our financial means to manage the impact to taxpayers, specifically pegged to the median single-family home tax bill as our kind of guideline. And there's a calculation here that we've shared previously last fiscal year and when we originally modeled that shows just that. So essentially the calculation is saying that if we use approximately $980,000 of one-time funds, we would be able to get that impact down, maintain that impact to the $300, which is what came online last year when we began paying the debt, because it's level debt. So that's the summary of that piece. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it back over to Amy.
So as you're aware, last year, at the recommendation of the Finance Committee and Select Board, town meeting voted to apply $1 million of general stabilization, $320,000 of capital stabilization, and $1.25 of free cash to reduce the tax rate. This year, the town administration and finance team is recommending a 1.75 shift, as well as $1 million in free cash to maintain that $300 median single-family tax impact. Next slide. This is just an overview of everything that's happening and everything we have to do. So we're meeting today. Monday, we have town meeting to have the vote to appropriate money from free cash to offset the debt service. We'll have the classification hearing, as well as the Board of Assessors has another meeting tomorrow to make an amended vote on the valuations. We will be submitting to DOR, and as of right now, it's taking about 3 days for them to turn that around to us once it's submitted, in anticipation of getting our tax bills issued by January 1st.
With that assumption of using the million and going to 1.75, where does that leave us with our ratios on the stabilization?
The stabilization wouldn't be touched because that's only free cash that would be utilized in the recommendation. So it would still leave our general stabilization at 8.84%, capital stabilization at 1.97, and that would bring the free cash to 3.69%, which is still within recommendation. And it would leave about 480,000 available to appropriate for whatever other uses.
How much?
480,000.
To get down to the 3%.
Yes.
Saying, if we
Yeah,
so
you would
chose
in
to
fact
do
have 2.585 to act left, but 480 to stay within the policy.
Can you just remind me what we spent last year in town meeting for free cash?
1.25.
No, not for this.
Oh.
For non-tax offset purposes, what did we use in free cash?
We used 300,000 to establish a special education stabilization fund. We used just under 5,000 for prior year bills, and we used, no, that was it.
Okay.
20 minutes.
Not bad.
Whoa.
Not bad.
Mic drop.
Kind of not really.
Yeah, we had a preamble of 10 minutes, so.
And the current shift is 1.7?
1.7 was last year's shift, yeah.
And when it shows difference versus 2023 on this last slide, and with the recommended line, I'm on this slide. Which,
Yep.
or this one, I suppose, with the yellow stripe in it. And we talk about the difference being $573. That's a combination of the 300 for the school plus normal increase, which is why it's not 300, it's 573.
Correct. The values of the homes went up, and
Right.
that's a benefit to the homeowners.
And can you just give us the numbers, at least for us, maybe for everybody, that brings the free cash ratio down to 3.69.
3.69?
And to stay within policy, which is 3% at the low end of the range, that still leaves how much theoretically?
481,000.
So since we did not notice this as a hearing, perhaps we can take a straw poll, or at least share our thoughts individually, so we can provide, some input for FinCom, leading up to their meeting, tomorrow.
Is it possible even that we can vote to, about the free cash? How much?
Well, I guess we can vote free cash, that's just a, yes, but, yes, I guess we could vote free cash. But we'd have to, yes, fine. So let me just say, my only point in saying this is a longer presentation is it's really this meeting is the one time a year where we soup to nuts help, our huge ratings, all the people that are watching us, but truly that we go through soup to nuts, everything about our finances to be able to explain why we are where we are tax-wise. And Amy, you did a great job doing it quickly, but we gave everybody the 400 level course,
yes,
not the 100 level course. And every year we sit through the 100 level course because it's not just for us, and I know we're the board and it is for us, but really, frankly, this is the only meeting a year, the reclassification meeting is actually the only meeting where soup to nuts. My first meeting is the first year that I started to learn. That was my building blocks, so I want us to figure out how to correct that. Tonight's not going to be the night to correct that, but I think it's really important because there's a lot of, even the slides going by fast, people are going to say, wait a minute, why is my property going up? We don't talk about, we have the assessor here, and we have very knowledgeable people, and we don't spend the time talking about how we assess properties, and why do we have so many residential neighborhoods for classifications or things of that nature when other towns don't have that many classifications. And we get into some nitty-gritty that really relates to, frankly, how people's properties are taxed, and usually explains why it explains a negative away, or at least gives you information to understand why a negative exists a lot of times in this community because of that. And so I want us to find a time, Mr. Chairman, to go back to be able to do this, because even these exemptions, we should be having an hour-and-a-half conversation just on new growth. Just on new growth. This is the lowest new growth we've had in a decade, right? Just on new growth. And if you look at our peer communities on new growth, you're going to see no one close to us in the negative, right? Now, that's, I believe the point. It's because we don't have a big project. But if one big project can affect us to that degree in new growth, it should scare everybody. It should highlight a vulnerability of our budget that we should not be just doing one slide on. And I'm just using it to be illustrative. I don't want to talk now for an hour and a half on new growth, but that vulnerability should scare people. I mean, I went through this page where you have all the peer communities, and I went onto the Gateway, and I wrote what they are. And one community, Rockport, is down 35% on new growth, but no, we're down 70. I mean, to be clear, we're down, and no one else is close to that. And so, obviously, in those communities, we'll learn things. You know, Winthrop's up 200%, right? I'm guessing we're going to be able to point to projects, right, about those things. But also, what's our building permit situation to really understand how we're capturing value? And again, it's the assessor's role and the Board of Assessors' role to go through and make the valuations. So I'm not questioning what the valuations are. I think we should have light and air on how valuations are done and how we capture new growth. So when we have these building permits, right, our commercial building permits, our commercial new value is $60,000 this year. That means for all the commercial properties here, the first time increase of value based on building permits, let's just say for lack of a better phrase, is only $60,000 of value. We have an equalized value of $100 and something million of, what's our residential equalized value? Our commercial equalized value for the commercial assessment, do you guys remember? Anyways, the point is, it's in here. It's pittance, right? 60,000 of new growth on commercial. Now, there's been prior years where we've had 100,000, and there's other years where we have 3 million and 5 million. It's not to put into question the numbers. It's more to explain the numbers because it is really super complicated. And when we have starts of meetings where we have the school committee, understandably, and the chairwoman come before us and say, hey, look, we're going to need help. Like, she's right. We're 5-0 on helping. Like, it's not a question of that. It's just that it's literally Jenga. It's literally that. And so I think us spending the time on this process in particular just lays the groundwork. When we've spent it in town meeting, when we've given a financial tutorial without it being pedantic to town meeting, I think it's helped. I think it's helped people understand and have them have confidence saying good times and bad times. They may not understand everything, but they're at least building confidence in our financial team. They're building confidence in our finance committee, our assessors, and just to know the seriousness in which we're having these conversations. So that's my only point about the length of them, because this is like 8 topics in one, and I used new growth as an example, but that is something we can't fix it tonight, as long as there's no errors in it. We can't fix it tonight, but that should scare the bejesus out of us, because we thought we were being conservative collectively when we created this guideline to say it was safe to assume 425,000, right? But now we have a $200,000 deficit here. So anyways, I've said enough, but I just ask us to find those times and spaces, because I think we lose an opportunity to really, for us to think critically and debate and challenge each other, but also to share information with the assessor, with the financial team who do so much. And I appreciate the chair of the finance committees here tonight, and he spends so much time on this as well, to just share that dialogue publicly, because it will explain some of the later conversations why we can't do everything the school department wants to do, or the police department wants to do, or the fire department. It does explain that, or explains the choices we have to make in order to do that.
So I know you said you didn't want to spend an hour and a half on new growth, but I have additional commentary on new growth.
You can spend it. Go for it.
So, as you said in the beginning, it felt a little dire, right, what we were going to talk about today. And when I looked at new growth, I thought, well, is it an outlier, or is this the expectation going forward? And so there was a very small sentence at the end of slide 32, where you say new growth is expected to exceed budget expectations in 2 through 5 year time frame, and then you gave us some, ideas of where it might come from. But what do those projections really look like? Because we know what Elm Place is going to offer us, right? And we know what the Glover residence is meant to look like. Maybe not these last other ones, but so what is the expectation of new growth going forward?
There is some reason for hope, but as our building inspector said to me when I queried him about new growth and about new permits, he said, look, we're largely built out. we're not going to expand. God's not making any more Swampscott. So we have to live with that reality too. 21 Elm Street is going to be a lifesaver over the next couple of years, but that'll be over a couple of years. It won't be all at once. And then the General Glover, that's going to be another possible lifesaver. But once those are gone, we're pretty much built out. There's not much more that we can do. The unfortunate thing, or the fortunate thing, is that new growth is an automatic override to Proposition 2.5. And that's great, as long as you have a lot of new growth. If you don't, it doesn't mean anything. One interjection I might want to make, just having been an assessor in several communities in the Commonwealth, usually classification hearing or classification discussion is the only item that's covered in the evening. And I think that would give you more time, and us more time, to explain what we're doing, how we've done it, and where we're going. And I would encourage the town to set aside an evening for classification and have that be the only subject.
I agree.
Thank you for that.
On the other hand, I actually believe that doing what you just did is much clearer. We can drill down, and there may be a few people out there that really want to understand the depths of the assessing process, to understand how their taxes are calculated, but you know, the overarching mathematics here, you told a quick story which I think is more easily understood. And one of the central tenets, I think, here that we're trying to address is really keeping faith with a promise that I understand was made about building the new school and what we were going to do for people's property taxes. And that is, it seems to me, kind of the larger story that we're, you know, basically telling here. And that is the choice that I think really is in front of us. And you've made a recommendation about the path. We are fortunate to be in a position to be able to keep faith with that promise, as I understand it. There's other questions, other options, many, many other options, what one could choose to do with the excess free cash. I'm sure we all could come up with different ideas about that. But you know, I wasn't here really when that kind of promise was made, but that's kind of the general frame that I'm operating in right now, is that is the first kind of order of decision that we need to make, because as soon as you make that decision, clearly there's not really much else to talk about. So that's my perspective on it right now, but I'm definitely very interested to hear whether or not there's a much larger picture that other people are seeing for this conversation.
I appreciate you saying that, and it's a good reminder of the clarity that maybe comes through in this presentation, because admittedly, some of us may be a little bit more PTSD, if you will, on taxes at the moment here, to be honest with you. I just want to give you an example, though, that I think we are living up to our commitment about offsetting the increase of the school. But in the prior years, before we had the school, we were still offsetting taxes by using reserves and free cash. This year, we're not. This year, we're using the entire amount functionally just to live up to the bargaining in the school. And so does that really mean that we're living up to the bargaining in the school? And one may say, well, no, we've just taken money and saying this money is going to the school, but now we're not giving money to all the other stuff that built up our taxes. And so I actually thought we were going to have, and I think when we were talking about reserve guidelines and things like that, I don't think the assumption was automatically this was all going to be free cash for the school. I think there was probably a school of thought, and not necessarily agreement, but a school of thought that the commitment on the school would actually require us to go into some of our reserves, some of our into our stabilization, because we had such big stabilizations, right? Not just use free cash, use some of the stabilizations. And actually, if we go back to some of the presentations that the finance team did, we actually talked about how much would we need to use, and it wasn't just free cash, right? And so what's happening this year is that we're making a decision. And again, I'm not critical of the decision at all. I'm just pointing out the discussion that we're not having, right? Which is, we are living to the spirit, I think, of it, but I think we're just taking it from one thing and putting it to somewhere else, as opposed to having it be additive. And so I think there's at least a dialogue to be able to say, should it be additive? Okay, 1.25 is great because that's what we needed to offset the school bond payment above 300, for the median single-family home owner. Do we want to apply anything else? And can we apply anything else? And I think, to me, we've benefited in the past, and I'm looking at the chair of the Finance Committee, but before he was a chair and while he's been chair, we just benefited by having those roll-up-the-sleeves conversations about saying, should we be doing something more? And I feel as though we're, again, without judgment, we're shortcutting that here, and we're going to go and we're going to make a decision on Monday night. And, I think there's again, just a lot of conversation. I hear you tonight, what we can do, but I just want to point out to you that dynamic, because I think there's a real conversation for us to have about the guidelines in general. It's not holistically, do we follow the guidelines, do we not follow the guidelines? There's 8 different elements in those things. There's certain things we'd be able to say, hey, this is an opportunity now where we should be looking at maybe dropping our general stabilization because X, Y, Z, and because we want free cash. And why do we want free cash? Because we also know that this upcoming town meeting, we have 480,000 before we go over to that number, and we want to protect that number more. Why do we want to protect that number more? Because free cash can be used much more, in the spirit of free cash can be used more generously for almost anything. Not operating, but non-recurring expenses. Whereas the stabilization accounts, the purpose of those were really like rainy day, emergency. Specifically, you woke up one day and said, these funds are going to be put aside for this purpose. Whereas free cash can be, hey, I have an idea, right? And do that, so to speak. And so I think there's a big policy. I just don't want us to get, and I don't think we are, I just don't want us to get away from those policy conversations and the collaboration with FinCom that came to the guidelines, because I think that collaboration was really important. We're not all like-minded people, but we sat in the room and we saw the same data, and we listened to the numbers and we listened to the financial team, and we all came to some conclusions, and I'm confident that even with the change of memberships, that spirit, that collaboration still results in the benefits that gets us a $100 million elementary school, something we had to do, right? And gets us a fully funded school budget, which is what we have to do. But that takes a lot of hard work and the rolling up the sleeves and conversations like this and respectfully, not a lot of time at a microphone lecturing people. It's the hard work for us to do here. And I just want to make sure that we just got to find our way back to it, Sean, because it feels like we are moving fast. But this is, again, we have town meeting on Monday, but I feel as though we're skipping over some really important conversations. So I just wanted to.
So Peter, I hear you, and I just want to say, like, look, we probably spend the most amount of time noodling this classification presentation out of all the other presentations, because over the last 5 years, we've looked at all the historical data. We have this all baked in, and it's baked into our mindset. When we sit down and talk about all of the town's finances, we look at our categorical place with all the other cities and towns. We try to figure out, are we spending money as wisely and as prudently as possible? There is a lot of data. That fourth slide in this presentation contains an enormous amount of data about how each category of property changed and why it changed. It should kind of make somebody scratch their head to see commercial property go up by 2% and residential go up by 10%. Like, this is a big variance, and we're shifting a tax burden from commercial to residential. And folks should understand, the market does change at times. Sometimes the market changes the other way, where commercial will grow faster than residential. That's typically when we have an economic downturn. But we're in a different cycle, and there's a really complicated conversation around those changing categorical areas of our real estate. We could spend hours talking about some of this stuff, and I think it would help us make better decisions. To Doug's comments about, how do we use our limited financial position, whether it's free cash or stabilization, to try to seed all of the master plan responsibilities. I think we've done a pretty good job thinking about how to get into practice, but it is enormously complicated. The one thing that I really appreciate about Swampscott is, at this time of year, we always think about our tax levy. We think about the tax burden that Swampscott taxpayers have to pay, and we try to be as careful as we can when it comes to how we set that rate. A lot of communities blow through this, and this becomes ministerial, and they don't spend any time talking about it. They just think it's perfunctory. We don't. We actually roll up our sleeves, and we study this, and we try to have as many complicated conversations around the assessing data and the changes in valuation and our financial position as we can.
I have another question or thought, but.
Go ahead.
Sure?
Yep.
Okay. I feel like we're talking a little bit around it, like, we're here right now. I mean, there are theoretical options, right? You've put one on the table, right, which is to keep faith with that promise. What I'm hearing from Peter, theoretically, is that one could tap stabilization and leave free cash at a higher level. Now, we're already below target for stabilization, which is why, in my mind, I kind of excluded that. There certainly, I'm sure, are other approaches here. One could say, we've heard that there's going to be need for the school, not an insignificant one, in 2025. We're basically plundering, to be dramatic, our free cash here to keep faith. Is that prudent? Should we say, actually, we need to reserve a little bit? Maybe we won't be able to get down to 300 like we thought. We get down to 350, I'm just making up a number. Because we know we want to keep some in reserve because there's going to be challenges coming. Let's just talk about, like, these are the specific things that we're effectively deciding. If we decide to go with what you've proposed, we're effectively deciding the other things. So these are the options right now. We don't have to kind of talk around what the possibilities are. If there are other options.
I'm gonna tell you, I wouldn't support any other option but to fulfilling what was promised to the taxpayers. A lot of people came out and they voted to approve that new school, and they approved it because they felt that my taxes aren't gonna go up, more than X amount, and it's a good value, and
Yeah.
I think we owe that to the taxpayers. That school's not even open yet, so I would not wanna have this conversation at all.
If I may, just for context, for the sake of conversation, while we did talk about the stabilization funds in terms of percentages, the dollars for it, there's 6.2 million in general stabilization and 1.38 in capital stabilization.
Which are both below policy
Yes.
target, right?
Yes, but
Slightly.
for the sake of dollars,
Yes.
and those amounts that they're under is about 112,000 on general and 22,000 on capital.
So 6.2 and 1.3, so 7.5?
Yes.
And how many reserve dollars did we have 5 years ago?
I don't have that right in front of me, but I can have that for you.
I'm just,
A lot less than that.
a lot less.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
curious.
think over the
Okay.
last, 6 years, we've gone from, probably, 3 million up to 10 in reserve, and we've taken it back down
Yeah.
because over the
All
last
right,
couple of years.
Went over 10.
On slide 29 in your presentation, it will show you,
That's right.
all the way back to 2016.
There you go.
So I'm just curious, Mary Ellen, you just made a statement did you hear anything tonight that made you think anybody was suggesting not doing that? Because I think everybody's.
Well, when I was throwing out other options.
Well, but.
Or he was theoretically
Theoretical,
throwing
okay, I just want to make sure
I
that,
was
okay,
answering
okay, I just
that
wanted to make sure, because I
theoretically
think
wouldn't support.
that I think is the baseline is my comments were actually, is there more?
Yeah.
That we should be doing, not less. I wasn't advocating less. I'm not sure I'm advocating more. I'm advocating the importance of that dialogue so that I can critically think about whether or not more is appropriate, and the chair of the finance committee and the finance committee members can think it, who now have to digest this in 5 days. And you all can, I was just advocating the time.
Actually, tomorrow, I think they're meeting.
Yeah, so, right, but
Everyone's meeting again on Monday.
that's what I was just advocating.
Are you
We're
advocating
constantly
more?
meeting.
I don't know yet, because we haven't had enough, I just truly don't know where I am, because I'm cognizant of where our trend is going in our ability to fund stabilization. We were using free cash to fund stabilizations. Last year, we didn't fund the stabilizations because they were in the numbers. But we know that there's gonna be demands on those stabilizations, but yet we're drawing down on free cash. You know what I mean? It's like, can get out of breath rather quickly because a lot of things are moving in, again, just inevitably, we've tightened things, and so now it's really fine tuning. I just haven't thought that through because that hasn't been the analysis yet that's been presented to us. But I did want to just express that there is not, I mean, Patrick, you tell me, or Amy, you tell me, how much of the $1.25 million is what's taking the tax rate for the school, the cost of the school down to 300? Is that slide 32?
1 million, that's 1 million.
1 million.
Yeah.
So it's $1 million,
Yeah, it's
right?
about
So,
980,000.
right, and so it's the 980,367. And so my question is, great, we're doing 250 more, if we're to take that recommendation, is that enough compared to what we've been doing historically? And all I'm saying is that historically, we've actually, every year done, last 3 years, we've done $1 million, $1.25 million, something significant, a 7-digit number, close to a 7-digit number, before the school ever hit our books. But now we're using 80% of that 7-digit number to pay for the school, so therefore we're actually using less to pay for the non-school increases. And that's all that's just the discussion I want to have. And again, I think we are in spirit, but not totally, because we're just taking it from money that we would have used to offset the taxes anyways, or historically we have used to offset the taxes, to now use 80% of that dollars to actually just pay the portion of the school down.
Yeah, Peter, I actually think we're using 100%. We're not putting anything purely into ratcheting down.
No, you are. 980 is all that's required to get the delta between whatever would actually be in 300.
Right.
But he's recommending 1.25.
No, he's not.
No,
He's representing
no,
a
no.
million. So you're 2%,
Yeah.
$20,000.
So why is this highlighted here? Sorry, you 1.5. You were doing 1 million. So even worse.
Right.
How about
It's
this? We're
everything.
spending nothing.
Exactly.
Sorry, go back to my original
$20,000.
point. We're spending nothing that we normally would. So we're, if you will,
Yeah.
if the school hadn't been here, we would have still probably done $1
Maybe
million,
spent more.
and the taxpayer would have had the benefit without the increased cost of the school. So I appreciate that we're sitting here saying that we're living up to the spirit of that. I'm arguing that I actually don't think we are. yet.
But at the same time, with this data, we are within 3% of the peer group. So you all have done all this ratcheting down year after year after year, which puts us in a position to be able to afford the school. And
Again, totally, that's a really good point. Again, I'm just going back to, and we're kind of having the debate, I'm just going back to, this is to me the type of robust discussion that we have. We go home, we come back and we have the conversation again, and I think Mary Ellen and I have benefited at times where we listen and say, yeah, okay, and we come back and like, I played back in my mind what, you guys were talking about, and hey, this is a thought, or we listen to FinCom's view on things and come back. I just want to make sure that we've done such a good job getting here, and I want to give credit to where credit's due with really the finance team and Sean, and yes, the volunteer boards too, but really, it wouldn't have happened without you guys changing the rudder here. I just don't want us to lose that deliberateness, because that actually is what brought all the boards together.
Peter, this is probably one of the most important conversations this board could have, and I frankly want to hear the board talk more about where your positions are with taxes. Like, I want to hear each of you just say, like, are you happy being, at 3%? Are you happy being, the 10th highest tax community in Essex County, or do you want to be the 15th, or do you, like, where are you, in terms of your policy positions? Because, frankly, I was hired 6 years ago to try to make the town a little bit more affordable and try to address some of the structural problems that you've had with budgeting and different things. And yeah, we've made a lot of these tough decisions. I can't explain to anybody how difficult it has been to try to get this budget into shape and get the town taxes into shape. It's impossible in so many ways, but we've done it. Now that we're here, what's next? And how do we actually use this financial position to actually continue to continue our work to master plan, planning work and working plans? We have some exciting economic development projects for Vince Square, for frankly Humphrey Street, for town properties and other things that, it's not all dour, but it's complicated. And we need to kind of figure out, are we still gonna, continue to focus on keeping Swampscott in a balanced position when it comes to all of our finances, given the fact that we have the largest percentage of senior citizens on fixed incomes out of any of the 34 cities and towns in Essex County. Like, how does this all interplay with our collective framework for policy? This is the single biggest policy decision that affects everybody's pocketbooks and wallets that we'll make. And it deserves probably 2 or 3 meetings, and it deserves, a whole lot of robust conversations about what's changing every year about valuations and budgets that affect that rate.
Well, Well, I mean, furthermore, I mean, this also requires us to have, a more in-depth conversation about our financial policies, and about, what we're looking at for reserves, in general stabilization and capital stabilization as well. So, how do we have that conversation? I mean, we're basically out of time before town meeting. I mean, we're gonna have a meeting on the 11th, 30 minutes before we convene our special town meeting. That's not enough time. We're gonna have another meeting on the 20th of December. We'll have already voted this at town meeting. So it's one of these things where, yeah, I agree. I think we do need to have a greater conversation. We need to talk about how we get from today, where we don't have, where growth is down, what did you say, Peter, 70%? Where growth is down 70% for this year. How do we get to where the new growth is going to emerge, where we're gonna get to those Vinnon Square projects that are gonna generate X number of dollars in new residential and commercial growth? So how do we get from today to 3 to 5 years from now?
Well, I think we need
where
to see
that
some
comes
serious
online?
assumption tables
Yeah.
that go
Yeah.
out 5 years, which we don't have here, so
No.
we're kind of like shooting in the dark. So I think once we put those tables together, then put assumption tables together on budgets, we can have a better idea of what to look at.
Yeah, and that would make me much more comfortable in having a conversation where we would potentially deviate from these guidelines that have been put in the policy. But without those assumption tables, you're right.
You also have to think about, as far as our policies, what was the effect on our policies with our rating? We don't want to we want to lose what we already have, so.
Yeah.
And I think if you drop some of those policy numbers, that could affect it.
Yeah, I think the rating agencies called up a number of things. For the first time, they called up the fact that we have a reserve levy capacity that is significant. And it was the first time they actually said, hey, Swampscott, you actually didn't tax up to your 2.5 levy capacity. And you've started to actually look at, how you manage. We got a reference for strong management. And that strong management definition is related to the financial policy, the benchmarks, making sure that we have a focus on all of the key metrics. This is not, general practice in every city and town. And so, this has been part of, a constant, focus for managing every contract and really thinking carefully about, how we're building our financial prudence.
Sean, did you share the findings of the ratings agency with the board, or can you?
Yes, I can,
Please.
yeah.
Okay.
It seemed,
Go ahead.
I think we're talking about a matter of time here, in the sense of we have a limited amount of time to make this decision about the tax rate, as I understand it. And to your point, David, and yours, Mary Ellen, we're going to need more information to really answer your question, Sean, because, I don't know if you're going to get anyone to jump up and down and say, yeah, I'm for raising taxes, or I'm for slashing taxes. I mean, it all depends, right? So it feels to me like you found the right middle ground with this proposal, I would say, which is, Goldilocks, in that we're meeting our basic obligation. We're not continuing on our path that we've been on of improving our relative position. We're going to be kind of holding steady, assuming everyone else kind of continues the way they've been going. So we're going to have a pause in improving our situation. That's a result of this. But we're making big investment, right? We're making a big investment in the school. And we've made other big investments, right, which have drawn down a little bit from stabilization. So there have been some bets that the town has made over the last couple of years. And now we're going to have to start paying the bills, right? And so we may not necessarily be able to continue to improve our relative position. Maybe not. We'll see. But certainly in an environment where we don't know for sure that there's going to be new growth of an X amount at this moment, next year or the following year, we certainly have some prospects for it, and probably will be. But until we know really what that is, build those assumptions, we really kind of drill into what's going on with the schools, other major ticket items, what's the overall capital plan. You know, the other big ticket, of course, is the retirement, you know, health insurance. There are all these big items, right, that we really kind of can benefit. That's not all going to happen in the next few weeks, of course, right? There's a lot of preparation from you all for us to kind of model that out. So in the short run, it seems to me that this is a good plan. I wouldn't go any deeper in terms of like trying to cut the rate any further, because there may be some short-term storm clouds that we need to manage through. We can always decide in January, February, if we have our discussion, maybe there's more free cash or stabilization that we want to do something with. It wouldn't be about tax rate at that point. Or, you know, there's always next year. So to me, that's kind of like, take this first step. We need to do our work. So when we get to next year and we're having the same conversation, we're very, very prepared to understand what the ramifications are.
I just have one question. Peter, are you thinking of going higher on this number to reduce the tax rate? To use more free cash to reduce tax rate, to go to 1.2?
No, not necessarily free cash, let's just use dollars, because
Okay.
then I don't worry about which pocket it comes out of, like stabilization versus free cash. I think what I'm saying, Mary Ellen, is that ideally we would have that, robust discussion, because again, I would love to be able to all of us take credit and say, look at us, we did exactly what we said, but I don't think we are, because if the school hadn't been a reality, if we weren't doing a school, right, what would our tax position be this year, and how much free cash or stabilization would we have used to offset the levy? And if the last 5 years is any predictor of the future, it's 7 digits. But if not, maybe not. There's other reasons we could not done it. So it's a hypothetical admitted, but I think that thought process and that intellectual honesty and that conversation with Finance Committee, with town meeting, has benefited us, as opposed to not having that. I really have believed that the bad news bad news is not the right word, the robust conversations, and that we get up there and we don't just toot and say, look, we just lived up to the spirit of something, when, depending on how you look at it, maybe not. Let's own that, and let's lead breadcrumbs to the future, so to speak, to be able to say, this is what we're seeing ahead of us, and this is why we're doing things a little differently, and we're going to revisit some policies, not because we're all of a sudden going to be jacking up taxes, just because we recognize that we're in a different world right now. Interest rates are where they are, new growth is where it is, we've got to reset a little bit here. But it's that dialogue, and that, I'm going to call it intellectual honesty, not that what we're doing is not honest. Please don't infer that. I'm just saying that let's just own it. And I think we have benefited. I think town meeting, when people say, well, why does town meeting follow the warrant and say yes so much? I think it's because even hopefully they understand it, and we provide good explanations so that they feel good when they're voting, but sometimes they don't understand all the details of it, but they know that they have honest, serious people who are willing to have the conversations, pros and cons, and put it out there and say, this is not perfect, but this is pretty darn good, right? And these are the downsides, and I think we've benefited from that transparency to town meeting. We've rarely gotten up there and said, this is it. I mean, this is binary, guys. This is great. This is awesome. It's a done deal. Even when the board's been unanimous, we don't do that. We still go up there and say, okay, but this is a choice. We're just making a choice. And I think all I'm doing is advocating for the continuation of that type of dialogue, because I think we run the risk of losing a lot of built-up credibility. And I want to go back to the relationships with the boards. I mean, you were on a different board at the time, and yours and my relationship, while we can disagree on some policy things, I think we both, sat and we built relationships and showed up at the boards and had discussions, and the school committee, we brought them in to be able to say, tell us your problems, but we're also going to tell you our problems, type of things, right? And we did that, and that allowed us, that was back in December 6th of, actually almost, like literally, December 6th of 2018 was our financial summit in Salem, when we all spent a day together having that conversation, and that was the first time we ever did that, but maybe we got to go do that again. Because that planted a seed that allowed us to build relationships and trust, that even when we didn't like the answer or we didn't necessarily agree with the answer, we understood the answer. And that is kind of what we have to do here. When we politicize things, right, and we throw kerosene on things, when we show up and lecture at public comment. I'm just telling you that doesn't build the trust. What that does is it breaks down, it does the opposite. And I'm just saying I feel as though we need to reinvest in that. We're all responsible for it. Not one person, all of us are responsible for it. And I just want us to think about going back to that. And so maybe it is another financial summit when we have a chance to take a breath to do that, because it's been 5 years now. And I just feel as though there's been enough of change of people in positions that it may be time to do it, because I believe that is where the success really came from, is that we collaborated. Didn't mean that we always agreed, but we had honest, thoughtful.
You know, I think you're.
Does that answer your question anyways about? So I would be open, I could be open for more money, to short answer back to your original question. I could be open to more money, but not knowing more than what I know right now. So I'm comfortable tonight, if this is what we have, then I wouldn't recommend more tonight, because I think I wouldn't want to circumvent those conversations.
I think that at this point, in thinking about how the landscape that's been laid out tonight, I have to agree that we might not be being fully honest with ourselves about this $300 and the impact of the school, right? Because if at the time we made the promise, the assumption was that we were spending another $1 million to offset, then that's not what's happening here. And if that's not what's happening here, we should just be honest and showing, if that were to happen here, how that would affect our finances going forward. If we could do it, what it would look like and how it would affect us going forward, based on not the one promise made, but the atmosphere when the promise was made, right? So what we were doing in parallel with the promise, so that we can be fully upfront with taxpayers when we say, yes, we did everything we could to maintain that. These are the drawbacks based on the circumstances we're in today. Because I don't just want to keep a promise for a promise's sake. I want to make sure that it's not just the spirit of the promise, it's the actual promise. You know what I mean? It matches the expectations the taxpayer had when we made the promise. And if it doesn't, then let's just drill down and explain why it can't, why we're unable to, or if we were to make it, what it would look like, so that if we don't do it, they understand what the outcome would have been if we did.
Katie, I think that's a good point. Like, what happens if we have to dip below the financial guidelines to actually keep faith with that idea that somehow, you know, we wanted to keep the payment or the debt service for the elementary school at $300 for the average single-family taxpayer? Like, we'd have to get a sense of whether or not, you know, there was a grand bargain that said, you know, that was going to be static based on interest rates that were going to quadruple or, you know, quintuple. Like interest rates are so different than the market that we're in, and that impacts our ability to afford a lot of the, you know, same economic conditions, and valuations are skyrocketing, and that's changing the median single-family home, and that changes the algorithm for how we thought that $300 was going to be pegged. And so lots of complexity to this conversation. Now, obviously, we could spend 2 or 3 hours listening to each other and getting a sense of how we think that should keep faith with, you know, our policy position. I think what we've tried to do is just set the table. This is ultimately the board's responsibility. I do think it's important for us just to recognize that we have a team here. We have 2 members of the Board of Assessors here. There's a lot of work that happens among elected boards and appointed boards and, you know, town staff. We should get under a big tent. That financial summit a few years ago did help us understand whether or not economic development needed to be a critical part. We've talked about economic development for years, and frankly, if we want new growth, we better think about how we drive it, because it's not going to happen without the town playing an incredibly stronger role in supporting economic development. Vinnon Square and Humphrey Street, we need to have a plan.
So I think the last thing, and then to Doug's point, let's find consensus, I think, tonight.
'Cause we need to, don't we?
Well, we do, because we need to, in fairness to the
Exactly.
Finance Committee. Finance Committee is kind of responding to us. And so it'd be nice if we gave them to respond to.
Yeah.
There was, Patrick, I recall, and I remember exactly the meeting, but I only can recall where I was sitting in my house on Zoom, pre-school vote, where we actually did a presentation that we actually showed, and it was where it's where this began, this shape, this amorphous shape is like embedded in many of our minds. But you had actually done something, I believe, that actually showed kind of how the corresponding, so where are we getting the sources to pay this down? And that's not reflected here, and that's okay. I'm just saying that we actually were specific, we were granular about it, which is the point I'm trying to make. Like, we went that far to be able to say, like, how,
With like when they're.
like,
when
no,
they're
like how,
fall
what
off.
of stabilization we would use and what of free cash we would use, given
Yeah.
the projection for those things.
You got that.
We actually had that, right? It's not in this packet here, and it differs, though, from what we're being recommended to do tonight.
We did a
And
cash flow.
But that's okay. I'm okay with it, to everyone's point. It's okay being different, but I think the honesty requires us at least to look back and say, what's changed that we're not doing this? And to hear from you, in particular, who crafted it, right? And to do that. So I just ask that come back into the conversation as well, because I think that's an important thing to not have just been a thing that we talked about before the school vote, but a thing that we are trying to hold ourselves to account to, if only to explain what's changed that things are different after the vote.
Well, I think during that time, we had acknowledged we were gonna dip in substantially into stabilization for the beginning couple of years. That's where we're most vulnerable. And then, we were anticipating we would get out of it. We could balance ourselves back out. That's what those forecasts were.
Yes, I agree with that.
So the original plan was to go below the guidelines.
The original plan was we were gonna hit stabilization. I don't remember the exact numbers, but we were gonna hit those stabilization funds in the beginning because in our peaks, that's when we were most vulnerable.
Well, do you have that? I'm just noticing Patrick's slide here does say reserves, drop reserves to 9% is the assumption at the top of that graph you just showed, Peter. So I think we were higher, and I think We already did it. We'd only go to 9, because Yeah. we were higher at the time, I think.
I think we were doing it for a couple of years.
Yep.
So I think we were also thinking that we were gonna be replenishing it.
Yeah.
We were gonna
had
replenish and then
forecasted.
take it, replenish and
Yeah,
take it.
part of the
Didn't do
assumption
last year, right?
included
We didn't-
making contributions to both stabilization funds annually.
Inflows and outflows.
Yeah, so is it 1.9, is it a 1.93, I can't feel the number, but something .93 million of stabilization applied fiscal year 24-25.
Which slide is that?
This slide here, on the very top, I just can't read it. 'cause it's-
30.
Yeah, so at the time, we did
Yeah.
many iterations, so that.
24 to 35, sorry.
Yep, so there was an assumption of a use of stabilization total over a course of approximately 10 years, and Mary Ellen's correct that we had projected a heavier reliance on one-time funds in the first 5 years,
Yeah.
and then it dwindles.
Yeah, well, that's because we have the roll-off.
Yes.
We took advantage
We
of
have
the roll-off of
multiple
other
roll-off.
buildings, right? And so
Other
that's where the big cliff in 35 is, because the high school is officially gone,
Yep.
35. But what was that? can you
Well,
just
we
tell
also
me
have in
6 million.
25.
What was that number?
5.9.
That says
So the
5.93.
Yeah, so over the first 10 years, we were assuming we were using, the point is,
Yeah.
we're all saying,
Yeah.
it's, check us against that. Like, check us against those, and obviously those were your projections as the treasurer, looking at interest and et cetera here. So things are going to vary, but I just want to bring it back to the table, because that to me is what rounds out the conversation on this one aspect of 20 aspects we probably should be talking about.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then that runs parallel to what we had been already doing at the time
Yes.
related to reducing.
Yes.
So that was the point that you had made originally, which got me thinking, like, well.
It's an and. It's an and, not an or, right?
Yes,
We're doing
right,
this
exactly. It should
and.
be an
yes.
and.
Yes,
And in this instance, it is not.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But things have changed.
Sure, but let's just
Interest
talk
rates have
about.
changed.
Yep.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
understand
talk
how
about
that's
it,
so.
yeah.
So anyways, so to Marilyn's point, I'm comfortable with the recommendations here, including going back to the 175, and using the 1 million. But I could be convinced to do differently, because I believe we had another path, and I don't know that things have changed enough to make me come off our original path, but I don't know that sitting here where I am today. I believe new growth is not, we shouldn't use new growth as a thing to say things have changed, oh my God. New growth is a totally different topic. important, but totally different topic. And that's just a couple $100,000 that we're talking about. The other stuff is many more zeros. We're talking. So anyways, that's my opinion if you want consensus. I'd throw that out there as a straw man for consensus to see if we can at least have consensus tonight.
Well, that's what I certainly,
Okay.
I'm on board with the recommendation.
Mary Ellen, Katie?
Yeah, I feel similarly, right? Like, what's presented to us is just fine. As Doug said, it fits just right, maybe, for Goldilocks, but if there is room to push, then I'd like to see what that looks like, because I do feel like the promise was made in conjunction with things that were happening at the time the promise was made, and so that we should be looking at that, and not just saying, see, the promise still exists, but where's the things that surrounded the promise, right? Like, so if we could see the repercussions of that, then I would be more comfortable to say enough has occurred, and this is the very best we can do in the situation, given the facts, but we just don't have enough of the variances, I think.
Amy, I just have a quick question. So you're saying that the capital stabilization will have how many dollars, and what percentage will that be if we use the million?
Well, if you use $1 million of capital stabilization, it would only have $380,000 left of it.
No, we're not gonna use it. I don't wanna use it to
Give
capital.
me a free cash.
If we use, on the free cash, are these our numbers right here? General stabilization balance will be 8, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Did you give the numbers in dollars again? You gave it twice already, but sorry.
Yeah, so general stabilization is currently at $6,201,598, which correlates to 8.84%.
Yep.
The capital stabilization is at $1,380,761, correlates to 1.97%.
Yep, got it.
And at the present moment, free cash is at $3,585,923, which represents 5.11%.
Well, I'm sorry, what's the percentage?
Hmm?
What's the percentage that corresponds with free cash?
5.11.
Thank you.
I mean, as for my position, I'm comfortable with the town administrator and the finance team's recommendation for the $1 million and the shift to 175. I do want to, I would like to read, that, you know, the report from the ratings agency, just to make sure, and have that shared with, you know, with the board, to make sure that that anything that we do above and beyond, just as we frame these future discussions and conversations, does not do anything to impact our AAA bond rating. We have a higher bond rating than the United States of America, and we worked so hard to gain that, and I just want to make sure that we're preserving that and doing everything that we can to ensure that we have that for years and decades to come.
Sure. I will send that up.
Thank you. I think the other aspect here that we're not even talking about, what we do this year, if we can't sustain it next year, it's just, we're just dealing with timing.
Right.
Right? I mean, so we're just dealing with timing here. So part of this is also smoothing this. We talk about with water rates, trying to smooth things so there's no surprises. If we do extraordinary amounts this year, we've got to be willing to do extraordinary amounts next year, or else that we got to pay the piper. At some point, you got to pay the piper when that free cash number. So when you become reliant on free cash, it's not a good thing, except for us, it's been reliant to basically buy down the levy, whereas other communities are actually using free cash to balance their budget, right? So we're at least, thank God, well beyond that. But, you know, here, so this is a timing thing. So even if we felt like another 250, yeah, what the heck, another 250 this year is great. We're just saying, okay, we've got to think about next year. Right. What are we going to be able to do next year? If things are not looking rosier, that 250 this year is going to come next year, on top of the fact that we are hearing budget constraints and pressures, right? And upward budget pressures. And we recognize that there is a new school coming online. There's other things that, so it's just another thing to think about here for that. So I think we've heard from everyone except for Mary Ellen.
No, I said.
Have you? Are you good?
Fine.
Sorry.
We have
You're good?
consensus.
I think we
have consensus.
Sorry, I apologize for missing that.
That's the way we
I
always
didn't
roll
say it
around
pretty
here,
short.
you know?
We're always in consensus. Can we talk about the warrant?
Yeah, can I just ask so tomorrow night
We have to take
FinCom
a
is
motion.
meeting? No, because we're not really voting.
No, I mean, a motion for our,
I don't think we
you
have,
don't need to,
I don't
yeah.
think we have to if you have
Yeah,
consensus, but I'm just wondering, FinCom's meeting tomorrow night? I think we have a meeting already, so you're not gonna see any of us, because we have a meeting at the same time as you, tomorrow night. So I'm saying that out loud, is there anything that we want to share with the chair of FinCom here, because we're not going to be there to share it tomorrow night? And I guess what I would say is just caution of further increases, and just because it's uncertain, and my concern would be the feel good this year. The feel good this year, next year, I don't, and smoothness has to be high on our list of things to do, right? You know, and I just don't want to surprise people and have all of a sudden this spike. And I don't know at this point if we would or wouldn't, so I just, for my own purposes, just expressed to you that, just because I don't know. And just wanted to offer to you guys, if there's anything else you guys wanted to express, because, you know, your recommendation's your recommendation, but it's, we want to be on the same page with you.
Doug, anything else?
I just wanted to pause about this thing about not taking a vote. You know, I think we've expressed, you know, just want to make sure, you know, and then looking at the warrant, is it really that place that we're going to kind of more formally opine? Or
Yeah,
it
so-
says here that we'll report on this at town meeting, but, I mean, we've kind of already given an indication.
On financial articles, we typically will wait for our formal vote for once FinCom has at least made a recommendation, out of respect, just to hear them out before we've finished our deliberation. So that's traditionally what we've done. Even though they're technically their recommendations to town meeting, we're still in the collaborative spirit, as opposed to saying, putting a stake in the ground. We wait to hear what they have to say and then reconcile it if there's differences, but get to town meeting where we're on the same page. So that's the sequence on financial things that we've done. There's nothing that requires it. It just has been a collaborative way of doing it. And so I think on Monday night, we would be taking a vote before town meeting, and then the moderator would then have it on the screen with the recommendation.
Yep.
Are you good with that?
I guess so, as long as it provides enough, you know, formal direction to whatever degree is appropriate to the finance committee, so they're not sitting there tomorrow kind of wondering.
I think we're
You're-
clear.
you-
They're clear.
you're good?
FinCom's on here.
Yeah, he's good. Okay, awesome. All right, can we move on and discuss the warrant? It's on our agenda. I think we've already addressed Article 2. Article 3, just wasn't sure.
Thank you.
Cheryl.
Dick,
Dick,
Cheryl.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
So as for Article 2, FinCom will present, or
Yes, it's my understanding, they have historically
they will move.
made a recommendation on
Okay.
that.
And here it says the article requires 2/3 vote if stabilization funding is the source. So do I deduce correctly that if we solely use free cash, that it is not a 2/3 vote? Yep. Okay. Just, maybe that should be.
And I think stabilization is actually 9/10, isn't it? It's not even 3/4. Doesn't stabilization require like this uber majority? But anyways, neither here nor there tonight.
Just so we're clear about that.
Yep.
On Monday.
Simple majority
Yeah.
versus a super majority.
If that ultimately is our source, yeah.
Okay, so more to come on Article 2. As for Article 3. Mariette?
Wayne?
Yes, I would recommend that we have the chair of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee
Okay,
speak to this.
sure.
I met with the town moderator late this afternoon, and he does want to keep every presentation to 5 minutes. So he's been clear about that.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, I'm just gonna,
Wayne, I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna.
Wayne, we're gonna have to practice before this.
You are in good company, Wayne, but yes, 5 minutes. Yeah.
Can I just go back? I mean, this is so, again, I just want to encourage a conversation with the town moderator before Monday. I believe us doing Article 2 in 5 minutes I'm just gonna say this, and not be prepared with, you have previously, whether it's Sean, whether it's me or somebody or someone, brevity will get us out of there. Brevity will not be a long-term benefit to us. I mean,
I hear
we only
you.
have 3 articles to begin with. We have to begin
can't
to
do that.
contextualize.
Yeah,
No, we're not gonna.
We're not doing
We have, but my point is, someone has to be prepared to contextualize where we are, and maybe it's, I'm not trying to throw it in the chair of the finance committee, because that's not, I'm saying I couldn't do it, but you should do it, Eric. But we've got to just hit some points on Monday night, so we can talk offline about how that.
That sounds
gets done.
great, Peter.
But I think
Let's-
it's critical.
All right.
I think this presentation tonight was great, so some version of this is my vote.
Yeah, there may be a modified version. There are more slides, believe me. We can,
Yes, there are more.
I know, it's different slides, No.
Speedier slides.
All right, so Article 3?
All right, Article 3. Yeah, Wayne will speak to it. Marion, can you introduce the article? And
I'd be
introduce-
happy
hand
to.
it over to Wayne.
You want me to introduce Wayne right now, too?
Yeah, you can,
Not
sure.
now, it's town
Wayne.
meeting.
Sure, we can
Okay.
How
have a little
we-
variety show.
Again, we haven't made a recommendation yet.
No.
So you,
Right.
depending on where the recommendation goes, you may not want to be introduced in the article, who knows? I don't know, I'm just saying.
Are we gonna talk about that now? About,
Please.
Yeah.
do we need to hear
Wayne's
from
here.
Wayne right now?
He's right here.
I understand.
Wow, that's really loud.
He's
I'm
here
here,
to answer
I'm here to answer any questions you may
questions.
have, and I have a question myself, actually, of process
Question
to the
for
board.
yourself?
To the board.
Go ahead, Wayne.
One of the questions I had, and I thought it would have come up in discussion when we met a couple of weeks ago, to which I could barely speak at the time. There's no effective date yet on this bylaw, and I think there should be one. From SWAC's perspective, we didn't feel like that was kind of in our purview to assign an effective date. We kind of wanted to leave it up to the select board, but 6 months, I would imagine, would be probably fair. Certainly want to hear input on that. And if we do need to do that, I don't know whether or not that is an amendment to the article or to an amendment to the appendix that holds the bylaw.
Yes, Wayne, my question back to you would be, you did a lot of the outreach, you and your team, right?
Yes.
The committee.
I can move over.
Is the 6 months coming out of that, like what you heard from people, is that's what they would need in order to make the inventory transition or some other issues?
We didn't actually hear any feedback one way or the other, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I would, from a lot of the information that we got, there's a high majority of people that are already kind of complying already.
Yeah, people are changing now.
Yeah, they know that the change is coming, or at least, trying to prepare for that. So I don't have a solid number. I would defer to other times where you had a prior bylaw with a regulation banning certain items in commerce as to what was the right way to go about that.
Well, the straw bylaw had a period of time that was attached to it.
How long was that
What was
time?
it?
Do you remember from the time it was voted on? Yeah.
Look at, I think 6 months or.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just want to step back for a second, before we even talk about that provision. So look at, I appreciate the email that was forwarded this afternoon about.
Yeah, and I apologize for
That's all right, it is what it is, welcome to our world, on that. I've come to appreciate the DNA that it's great we have people focus on it, but when we get done with something, we're done with it. We just are, right? Not once has the Board of Health mentioned the word straw. I'm going to harp on straw because it's our example. Not once has we heard it, not once has one person come to us, not once has someone come here and pointed out to us the non-compliance. Sorry, that's not true.
Do you want to back up and kind of
3 years.
explain the?
Sorry, Wayne, just give me 1 minute, just to say this. I don't take solace in believing, oh, well, we can always come back and amend further, we can come back and do these things, we can come back and do things, because the truth is, everybody is so busy in the demands on what we have on Solid Waste Committee, on Select Board, on Board of Health, on every committee is so great, we move on, and we just do, and I rarely can think of an example in my 9 years where that hasn't been the case, where we move on.
right? We have a presentation showing us how we're gonna pay for the school, and then we're setting the tax rate the next time, and we don't see the presentation there, right? We move on. That's because, not because anybody's trying to hide things, it's just that we're moving on to the next thing. We're busy and we're doing the next thing, and it shows up many places here. Your statement, and I appreciate it, and I believe it to be true, because I actually tried to do a little homework between last meeting now, is that there is high compliance already, which means I'm not comfortable that we're not doing enough, because I don't think we're gonna revisit it for a while. Because I just think human nature is we want you to get back on trash and compost and stuff, because that's a huge dollar issue for us, right? Which was the origination. So no disrespect to anything you guys are doing. It's actually, we want more of you, right? And so which is why I was saying, can we have this purview of the Board of Health? And I think Town Council said yes. I know Wayne may disagree or the value of that or whatever, and which is okay. That's a good, honest debate. But that's where my idea of having Board of Health at least have ongoing purview, to be able to say, hey, great, we've outgrown this. We're gonna, again, within the four corners of this, do something different, evolve. And I wish we had that with the straws, because, you know, we would be able to show up, one person could show up to the Board of Health and say, hey, have you seen, this is the straws from every business in town, and it says industrial compostable. And that doesn't really meet what we're doing here, but it meets the bylaw, right? And it's the spirit versus the actual thing. So that being said, my thought process is either work on language between now and Monday night that we can get comfortable with, that includes the right for the Board of Health to have ongoing purview to decide to change it, or just postpone it to February. And someone said earlier, the special town meeting didn't have a date. I believe I saw February 24th as a date, so I believe I saw a date. But anyways.
So Peter,
it was a
I'm
February date,
absolutely
so
happy to
February 5th.
get language to promulgate. I don't think we should wait. I just think, let's just.
No, again, I'm not advocating waiting. It's an either or. I'm not.
So can we frame the discussion from the public standpoint? Because yes, there was an email, there was some discussion with council. You know, Mr. Spelios, you brought up the fact that you wanted to have, let me back up even further from that. There was, the issue that started the conversation was basically, we have a material list that the bylaw would control, and we thought through that pretty hard. And we felt that, you know, of course, the fact is that industry changes. You could have a public emergency. There are other things that could cause a change, a necessity to make a change there. And we felt that the Board of Health, although it doesn't have regulation over commerce generally, unless in times of public emergency, that they are the most familiar with the food establishment business. They have the most contact with them, and it made the most sense for them to have that at least temporary authority to make those changes. We came out and said we wanted to have a 9-month temporary override if it was so necessary. But we felt strongly that, you know, if we're going to give, in this bylaw, if we're going to give town meeting the authority to approve the list as it was stated, then that's really the purview of town meeting. If town meeting wants to give the Board of Health full compliance and control of any material list, that's okay too. It wasn't the way we thought about it, but that would be different. I feel very strongly that you can't have either or. You can't make a specific list and then say, fairly, it's up to now another board to be able to make changes in permanence to a bylaw that is under the authority of town meeting. It just does not make sense to me in any which way respect. The law and the exclusion to which town council supplied was really in relation to, and I can read it off here, it was relative to agriculture and sanitary sewer systems. It was not related to commerce, which is what this bylaw regulates, and what the Board of Health typically has some regulation authority over. It just doesn't make sense. And frankly, if we're, I mean, Mr. Spelios, I agree with you. We can, as a town, as the public, we have other things, we move on. But this is the charge we have. If we're going to regulate specific items within a community, we have the responsibility to review those. If you feel that a change needs to be made specifically to the straw bylaw, I encourage that. And there's no reason that we can't. I just want to make sure that we're not overriding and providing the authority to a board to override in permanence something that is clearly stated in a bylaw approved by town meeting. Now, I would support the additional in other words, if you have a 9-month temporary authority to make a change, I would certainly support maybe making that multiple 9-month periods, or maybe a 1-year period, whatever the board may choose to select. So that if necessary and in permanence, there's a major change that happens within the industry itself, that we have time to prepare an amendment to the bylaw and make it as simple as possible to move forward.
I appreciate that. I think so, and I appreciate your explanation, and town council has come out differently with you with regard to the section and Board of Health's authority. I appreciate that you may not agree with, but town council has come out with their position on that. I just, again, I do see in this email here a member of the Board of Health articulate his support of adopting 11131 for this purpose.
I spoke to Mr. Schechtman after that, and
so
for what it's worth, he did not understand the issue at hand. I don't know.
Okay, let me just say, I'm not looking to, I'm telling you, and then we're just gonna, we had people crawling up our spine on straws. Let's be perfectly clear. I've gotten absolutely 0 phone calls of anybody with any concerns about this bylaw, which is either great public outreach or it validates a concern that I have that we aren't going far enough. And I want a duly elected Board of Health, to me, is if the bylaw says the duly elected Board of Health, your representatives, that if you don't like what they're doing, kick them out of office, have an ongoing right to review and amend, to me is actually a compliment to representative democracy. That's exactly what it's there for. And it's not like I'm putting...
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm going to finish.
Go ahead.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It's different than if we were making a volunteer board, right? A volunteer board's different, because then that's even months more removed, right? As opposed to a volunteer board, meaning the select board, who are the elected people, then create another board to defer, et cetera, et cetera. Here we're saying it, one of our town-wide elected boards can make that decision. Anyways, I've taken enough time. I'm in favor of postponing until, based on all these moving parts, I'm in favor of postponing until February. I think the spirit of this is wonderful. I can't wait for it to happen, but I don't want us to leave feeling good about something if, frankly, we're already in compliance, which I believe the market's further, and we should be pushing the market with this policy. So thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd like to propose, hopefully, a compromise. Taking the enthusiasm from Peter, I do think we should move forward now. I do think that this committee has worked very hard. We've postponed it once. I take Wayne up at his suggestion about maybe extending the 9-month. If you can come up with 9 months, maybe you come up with a year. So if you got town meetings or something you have to wait for, that gives you that. Usually there's a special town meeting or whatever, but at least you're covering yourself for if you do a temporary change that takes you to the next town meeting. I do think over the next couple days, I've not analyzed the email from town council, but the gist certainly seemed like they felt like it was actually okay to continue to have this authority. So we have to rely on them ultimately, with all due respect, Wayne. And so I'd like to kind of further check that out over the next few days and have some proposed language, specifically what the amendment would be to make that authority in perpetuity. That will be up to town meeting to assess whether or not they're comfortable with that. But I do think, and I would hope, Peter, that if we could get there, I think that was one of your options, that we can move forward, generally speaking, in that regard. I believe that the committee has pushed it to the appropriate limit at this time of what is acceptable or realistic. They've done all that research to know what is actually recyclable, what's not in this market right now, et cetera. So I think that work is good, and I want to kind of build on that. And I would still say, even if whatever happens over the next few days and town council comes back and says, whoops, maybe you really don't have the authority to keep going on and on. Well, then so be it. Then I think we need to move forward. And if the Board of Health comes up with things, then they're going to have to come back to town meeting. And we have that built-in cycle. This isn't like all of a sudden solid waste has to come up with it again, do the work, and then come up with it. Board of Health is actually now kind of a little bit of an engine running to propose things to come back to town meeting. So I hope that kind of,
Doug, I appreciate that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Wayne, I'd be happy to reach out to you tomorrow and set up some time to talk.
Yeah, I just want to say that the response,
Yeah,
the
let me
response that I
finish
wrote.
my point.
John, I appreciate you chiming in, but we're trying to figure out where the board is now.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure this out. I appreciate that, but I'm just like, I hear Doug's point, and curious what you guys
Let's hear
think.
from Mary Ellen and Katie.
Well, I want to hear what Sean has to say to Wayne.
Jesus.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, look, I'm happy to reach out to town council. I like the idea that the Board of Health can promulgate regulatory compliance. I really do. I think that makes a lot of sense, but I also think as an advisory committee, you know, SWAC can actually make recommendations to the Board of Health, and you can be that dynamic committee that I think you want to be. But the Board of Health is a town department, and day to day, that enforcement, like, we have a regulatory employee in that department that could help us enforce and really think about how it evolves. Plastics are a public health threat. Plastics are a health threat to our environment, and it's evolving. And I don't want to get stale when it comes to our ability to work through, you know, town meetings, you know, it happens once, twice, 3 times a year, maybe 4 at the most, and it can be a very bureaucratic and regulatory, you know, process. And I think our health department is a little bit easier to work through. And so if we can promulgate, let's promulgate.
No. I really feel town meetings, I don't feel that it should be the Board of Health. I think it's the town meeting should make the decisions. I think you can easily have a new bylaw, and as things change and evolve, we just go back to town meeting and make an amendment. And this has been in the works for some time. We've had public meetings, we've had reach out, we've had open discussions, and I don't feel like this is the right time to delay it and to hold things up. I think it's a good bylaw right now, and we can work on it, we can advance it at a later date.
Katie?
can I just make sure I'm understanding Mary Ellen? Yeah, but I can.
No, go ahead.
I can wait, actually.
Please, go
No,
ahead,
you
Doug.
go ahead.
Why don't you dug deeper, because I think you made a nice double entendre earlier. You said you dug deep, so I'm gonna Katie deep right now. Go right ahead.
So you like the idea that there's a temporary authority for Board of Health, but not permanent, and it needs to come back?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding, okay.
Okay, so I was in the car from the moment this email got sent until the moment I walked in the door, so I have nothing additive, because I have not digested any of this whatsoever.
Fair.
So I apologize, and I'm not trying to be coy or be non-committal, but I literally just read the email while you all were having that conversation, which means I didn't digest the conversation, so I don't feel like I can add anything to this right now, and I apologize for that.
Can I make a point of factual, just clarification? Not trying to opine necessarily. I just wanted to explain that response back to council was on November 19th. I only realized today that was never forwarded on to council for reply, and I'm awaiting council to reply back to my feedback. So there is a bit of feedback cycle that hasn't been complete. I did forward that email over to the chair and to the town administrator, so I apologize on behalf if you have not seen it in advance. I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. I'm sorry, it took me 2 hours to get here in the car, so you're good.
Yeah, no, I saw the email come in. I was in meetings this afternoon, so I didn't have an opportunity to fully.
No, on the 19th, I sent it.
On the 19th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it. It is what it is. It's okay.
Got it. Well, I must have had a meeting then, too.
Well, we didn't get anything on the 19th.
No,
No.
I did not. I didn't forward the whole select board down.
No, got it.
'Cause-
Look, I think a lot of work's been put into this. I think I think it would be a good incremental step for us to, I support this. I support the regulation. I support the implementation of it, you know, as we lead into the next fiscal year. And I think that it's something that we can, you know, so that would provide 6 months, you know, to implement. Is anyone in town still using styrofoam? I know that one of the restaurants.
Plenty.
One-
Yes.
Plenty?
Yeah. Plastics, styrofoam, you bet.
Oh,
Styrofoam in particular, yeah, I mean.
Styrofoam in
Yes.
particular? Okay.
Yeah.
Because one of the restaurants that I used to frequent has changed. So I did notice.
Yes,
That one.
I've heard that.
is that, do you know where I live?
Yes.
Let's not disparage any restaurant.
Yes, it is.
It's okay.
Open meeting.
So look,
No, beautiful container.
I'm supportive of this article, of Article 3. I'm supportive of moving this forward. And I think that it would be a great opportunity for us to then, work to continue to evolve. And, if we have to go through the Board of Health, if we have to go through town meeting, we can have that debate at a later date. I just need to become more informed and follow up on that email chain.
I just want to be clear, because, like, words are super important here. Saying, like, Peter is actually saying he's, like, uber supportive, not saying he is not supportive. And I think I lean in that direction to say, like, when you approached and said, oh, we're almost in full compliance, I was like, oh, bummer. Which is, like, not what you should be thinking, right? Because you should be thinking, like, that's the purpose of the bylaw. But to Peter's point, then why have the bylaw if they're doing it? And not why have the bylaw, but, like, why then are we not pushing them forward further? Yes, you did a lot of outreach, you did a lot of education, and that's probably what brought them to a certain point to get into compliance. But then can we not go further? Can we not educate more? Can we not understand further? What else we could be doing? What are other towns doing beyond this? Where, and maybe that, to be fair, given the time constraints, maybe that's next steps. But it is reflective on the bylaw, if they're already in compliant, that maybe the bylaw didn't push the limits enough.
So can I expand on my comments on compliance?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot that's actually defined in this bylaw. One of them is signage. One of them is moving from getting out of black plastics so that we can actually truly recycle them. There's a consumer advisory. There's some issues of, what can be served in hot foods in plastics. And I would say, when I said compliance, I'm talking about just the basic overall conformance to the plastic offerings, right? That was just based upon kind of a light survey that was done, midsummer over who's doing what. This codifies, what restaurants should be doing, and it sets the tone, not just on the materials, but on how they use the materials. And it also, puts a safety valve on what's actually allowed to be compostable, right? And it also is asking the food establishment to actually, offer recycling, to which they're not doing now. So there's more than just, a moderate discussion, which I appreciate, about, authority of which plastics. This is very broad in terms of how we're treating containers as a whole. I appreciate that. Are we going far enough, not far enough? I believe that is a constructive conversation to have. I really do. We may not agree in terms of effectiveness or in terms of, is that the real problem that we're, I should say, is the regulation solving the problem or not solving the problem? That is a conversation we can continue to have. You know what? Frankly, if we want to amend a bylaw, that bylaw again in the spring, or in April or May, I'm willing to have that conversation for sure. I just think right now there's nothing wrong with approving it as is. Let's see how it goes. Let's see. In reality, we have a lot to do even before we can get into that enforcement period. We have a lot of literature to make. We need to work with the business community, with the public as a whole. Let's just move. If we can move this forward and you feel like it either is not strong enough or it needs some sort of other management modification, by all means. Again, we've got multiple opportunities in February and May and so on. So I'll leave it at that.
And I want to move it forward so we don't slide backward. I want to make sure that we're, that the operational improvements and the investments that our small business owners have made in complying with what is coming or complying with what they think is coming and the outreach, you know, that the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, you know, completed is something that, that is going to continue to be implemented, because at the end of the day, you know, money talks, right? I mean, folks are gonna say, well, if I'm paying 15 cents per container for this, that's in compliance, and, well, they've delayed this bylaw twice now, and maybe they'll delay it again, and the enforcement period isn't gonna happen for another 12 months. You know, people vote and purchase with, you know, with their bottom line in mind. So, really, you know, I think this is fine as is, and again, I'm supportive of it. I want to move forward, and that's just, I'm just one of five.
Well, 2 of 5. I'm with you.
Okay. Okay.
So what do we do?
So we vote to, we can vote on what we have. We can motion to amend, but I mean, really, you know, what we have is what we have. There can be a motion on the floor of town meeting to amend, but I think we see where we are as a board and make a recommendation.
So I'd make a motion to accept Article 3 as is.
Second.
Oh, I
With
think we should-
a date?
with
With
an
effective date.
Effective date.
Yeah.
July 1st is
July 1, 24?
Yes.
Is that
Can we do
gonna
that here?
Be written somewhere? I mean, we're approving a motion, we're approving a warrant, or a motion on the floor that we're not looking at?
You're approving a recommendation.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I appreciate what you're saying. Yeah.
Sean, can we, wait, let's take the vote, and then if this passes, we can have town council review language that can include a date of
We can.
7/1/24. Is that your intent?
7/1/24.
Okay. All right, I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So this conversation that happened via email today, none of this is being amended to this?
Correct.
Well, in the motion, none of it's.
In the motion right
In the
now, as
motion,
it stands,
correct.
correct?
That doesn't speak to the email, that speaks to their motion.
Yeah.
A question I would have is, does even the temporary require
That's-
reference to 111, section 31? But that's fine. A motion's a motion. I'm not gonna seek to do anything.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
I would like to hear more from town council and see what language they wanted, and
That doesn't mean we
I hope
don't love your bylaw.
I hope we talk, no, I don't think it goes far enough, plain simple for me. And I appreciate what you've done, but, yeah.
Okay. Article 4. Comments, questions, discussions?
I have a question on it. Does, by passing this, does this mean we're passing the actual location? Because it doesn't say location, so that means,
It does, it says renovating and equipping Phillips Park with 4 pickleball courts.
It authorizes us as the select board to do a full takeover of Phillips Park.
Well, no, in fairness, the town administrator already has that authority.
It's actually
I do,
giving
but,
it to us.
you know,
right,
this is what the
why,
granting authority is asking us to approve as language.
Wait, why the hell, why are we doing that?
It's what the grant requires.
I understand.
I know.
Why would we do that as a matter of?
I asked that same question to town council. He said, if we want to accept the grant, we have to approve that language. And I said, what additional power does that give the town that we don't already have? And he said,
So,
you know,
so anyways, I think what this is doing here is it's,
putting it under the control of the town.
no, I actually think it's triggering something else. I think as though it may be that we've never, maybe it's the state's way of protecting, making sure that wherever this money is going is on land that's forever protected and dedicated for open space, and makes it Article 97 subject. for if we want to dispose of it. And I guess my question is Phillips Park and Phillips parking lot already subject to that? If not, we are making that change. And I have no opinion on whatsoever, but I look to staff to actually tell us that, and not me.
All right, I'll get additional clarification on.
I was speaking, do you understand what I'm sorry, I was speaking somewhat coded. Article 97 required act of the legislature to basically convert it from open space to non-open space. And that only applies to certain lands. This language would and it may be belts and suspenders, this land may already be absolutely subject to Article 97. I'm not saying it. It's just that my guess is this language isn't here to make sure, once the town takes the money and use the money, you're not undoing what you just built with this, or you're not losing open space.
Didn't we talk about potentially building an elementary school on this site?
Yeah, but that would have been Article, again, I'm sure we examined the Article 97 thing. I don't know the answer, though, to what it is. All I'm asking is that this has a lot of language in it that I couldn't explain on town meeting floor, and I don't hear anybody yet able to raise their hand and say that they want to explain it on town meeting floor. So
Nope.
If maybe between now and Monday, we could do that, and maybe vote on it Monday evening.
That's fine.
I can, however, answer Mary Ellen's question. I have a copy of the draft motion language, and it does specifically say, for the purpose of improving, renovating, and equipping Phillips Park with 4 pickleball courts, including without limitation.
That's about the specific location question?
Yeah.
Although that's not.
I mean, it doesn't specify exactly where
Right,
in Phillips Park, but you know, can't put it in a different park.
I mean, I know, I've actually seen the picture of exactly where, I don't know if everyone else understands exactly where it's planned to be. That's not a question. Or is it a question for you, Mary?
I mean, it still needs to go through, where, but it still needs to go through Concom. I mean, it's still, so our issues earlier about areas subject to flooding and conservation stuff, I mean, just for the record, this project has to go through the Conservation Commission. It's absolutely within a buffer.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
That is my understanding as well.
Yes.
When does this grant expire? I mean, like, when?
We have to accept the grant before December 30th, 2023.
And there's no other place that we looked at in town that could have fit this, because if Conservation Commission says it's not gonna work.
This is, the best location that we've been able to find. It's right next to a big, huge park, and you've got plenty of parking. This is really the ideal spot.
I mean,
Not sold on that.
It's troubling, and I have to say that, I had a couple questions. I thought I had resolved them. Assuming the gentleman that spoke tonight is correct, I'm very troubled by the fact that there was absolutely, supposedly, no conversation with the community. Do you have any information to the contrary, or?
No, I'll look into that. I do think that we can do some outreach, and we can actually, get some feedback from the neighbors, and really, we'll walk through the neighborhood and make sure that, they have a chance to speak to us before we get to construction. I get that, people generally don't like, some people don't like the fact that we invest in, recreational facilities for other.
That's not the.
Yeah.
Please don't say that, because that diminishes the concerns that he's speaking to. He's talking about proximity to something because of adverse impacts. Okay, but I just don't want to.
Look, this is gonna be noisy, there's gonna be some legitimate concern, and I wanna figure out, are there things that we can do to mitigate the noise? Are there things that we can do to help make the neighborhood a little bit more, accepting of this type of investment? So.
And I want to kind of, thank you, Peter, and I want to rephrase my question a little bit, because who knows, maybe he wasn't home one day. I don't know all the facts of the situation, right? But I do think it's very important that, in a community development project, that there's kind of interaction with the community around there. So
Agreed.
I appreciate you kind of following up on that, John.
I know, look, we've gone down, we've had neighborhood meetings. I've gone down to the neighborhood meetings for the new school a number of times. I've tried to make it a point to say, hey, look, we actually do want to listen. We want to ensure that where we can mitigate, where we can actually make small changes, we want the neighborhood to feel like, hey, we want this to be a successful investment. That said, I don't have the update on what activities the Community Development Department has made, and I'll get back to the board on that.
I would be very, very surprised if there was absolutely no
Right.
community outreach.
Right.
Very, very surprised.
So if we can, so that on top of the language, if we maybe can just defer further conversation or motion until Monday. I mean, just, I want to understand this legal language too, just to make sure we're clear, and take this up Monday before town meeting.
Okay, great.
I mean, I'm not trying to shut off debate, I just think we're talking deferring to Monday anyways.
Anything additional? All right.
This, I suppose while we're adding to your homework assignment, Sean, the flood issue, I think it would be helpful to understand any thinking that's gone
Wetland,
into.
yep.
You know,
Buffer.
is it already planned that it's gonna be bermed up around it or something like that? You know, people have raised, there's something in our climate action plan that, as well as Concom.
Yeah, I
that
mean, the
says-
Concom would actually want the exact opposite, would actually want it, if it's gonna flood, they don't wanna displace floodwater, so they're gonna, but anyways, yes, good question, I have no idea the
The
answer.
good news about, you know, some of these wetlands is we've removed a bunch of abandoned trailers from the
We've heard,
wetlands, so.
we heard.
Oh, that's what's different down there. What's down there?
I mean, but it's not just actually about the pickleball court area. I mean, that whole area, there's flood issues, you know, and it's gonna kind of get worse. But I would be interested to understand if that is really been thought about, or if it's more like, well, we'll deal with that once we go to Concom. And as I understand it, Concom maybe technically can't literally stop this. They can, but they can put conditions on, right?
No, they can deny. There are performance values in the bylaw, so Concom can not issue the order of conditions. So it's, I mean, just to clarify that. But,
Okay.
again, good
All right.
question to understand what planning we've done to anticipate this type of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. All right. Can we move on to the consent agenda? Consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the board. The Select Board may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion at the request of any board member. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. That's it.
You could take out the liquor license for the annual holiday festival. I won't,
Okay? All right,
the rest of them are fine.
all right. Is that a motion, Mary Ellen?
That's a motion.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'm gonna have to, I think, recuse myself on the climate action.
Why, are you a member?
Yeah,
Are you a voting member?
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine.
All right.
So I guess we have to
Oh,
pull
yeah, we
that
gotta
out of
take that out
consent agenda.
too.
Yeah,
Okay, so
sorry.
let's just vote these individually then. We're gonna have a discussion and possible vote to reapprove the reappointments for the Climate Action Plan Committee and stagger terms. What are the staggered terms, Sean?
Climate Action Committee, we have, let's see.
So right now, they're just one-year terms, and somebody had mentioned that we should probably think about stagger.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would the recommendations be for each individual member? When would their terms expire? Would they go? Am I missing something?
No,
No, no,
keep
go
going,
ahead.
you're on the right track.
But it's not in here,
Doesn't say.
doesn't say.
Yeah, there were no recommendations.
Okay.
So wouldn't we wanna make a recommendation? How many is it in the total of that?
There are 9 being recommended. One is, there's 10 members. One, we're still confirming whether or not they're gonna be willing and able to continue to participate.
Got it.
When do the terms expire?
End of this month.
Right.
Got it.
Okay, so,
We could do it next time.
I was gonna say,
Why is it the end of the month? We make
Because-
terms end of a calendar year?
The end of the
This committee
calendar
was
year.
when they were
usually the end of
established.
the fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
One-year terms.
Oh, yeah, I assume that our vote was a fiscal, we've never appointed on a calendar year.
No, fiscal.
If we did one-year terms, it's usually just 1 year to the end of the fiscal year. But anyways, out of abundance of caution, fine, but I just,
Or to get something done early?
yeah, that's.
No
that's
way.
Good for you, we're doing it early, so we can free up
Ain't
time
me,
to.
it's all Diane.
All right.
We're actually not gonna do it.
So there's a recommendation for staggered terms. You know, do we want to just appoint half to, 1-year terms, and the other half to 2-year terms or 3-year terms?
We might wanna go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year.
We could do
That's how
that
we do
too, it's just, you know.
I actually, Diane, unless you think it, why don't we punt this to the 20th and get that straightened out offline? We can
Fine,
get the
thank you.
10th members
Yep.
Maybe the
sorted out.
10th member might be.
Yeah. I don't want to offend anybody, you know.
As a rule,
Perfect.
just have this stuff sorted out, and for you to say, hey, I want to take something off the agenda even the night of, so we don't actually talk about things that we're not
Understood.
prepared to talk about.
Yep, thank you. Vote to approve the one-day liquor license for Andrew and Gemi for the annual holiday festival on Town Hall lawn, Saturday, December 16th, 4 to 8. I have a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. Vote to approve minutes of the regular meetings of November 15th and November 20th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, select board time.
Oh, I had something. I just have Disability Commission is working with the senior center on their, a grant for an electric van. That's all I have. right now.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Anyone else?
Oh, wait, I do have one little thing to add also. I forgot, I went to the retirement board, and they're just working on making an evaluation on who they're using for their advisor.
Okay.
And that's retirement, so those are the 2 committees I've got going right now.
Okay. What was that? I'm sorry. Tired. Okay, cool.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Joe, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.
Diane, thank you. Patrick,
Thank you,
Amy,
Patrick.
thank you. Wayne, thank you.
Wayne, Amy,
Sean?
Diane,
Oh, I forgot to thank.
David.